We welcome you all that are in the audience, and those of you that are online, you can watch us at washingtoncity.org/meetings.
We're on the same.
Start with our either one approval of the agenda.
Mayor, I can approve the agenda for our workshop meeting this evening.
Second that, Councilman Ward.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Mayor, I just want to note that number 4, I have a conflict of interest on for the agenda.
Thank you. So noted. Item 2, review of the Washington City Transportation Master Plan. Mike Shaw.
Mayor, Council. Sorry.
Dario.
Turn this one off.
Mayor, Council, thanks for having us. We have our update for our transportation master plan, and we hired Horrocks Engineering as the consultant on it. And Aaron Baker and Emily Andrews have a presentation for you.
Thank you, Andy.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Appreciate the opportunity to be here at your work meeting today. I'm Aaron Baker, and Emily Andrus is also with me. And we are with Horrocks Engineering, and we prepared the Master Transportation Master Plan. This was an update of a plan that we had performed in 2014. And we started this kind of in the COVID days. Still COVID days, but it's when the beginning of the COVID days, I guess. We always enjoy working with Washington. It's a great opportunity to work with Mike and with Andy and the others that we've had an opportunity to work with. And as we began the project, some of the operations that we do to begin with is we try to establish a baseline of what the traffic is like out on the street. And so we began doing that, and when March of 2020 came along, the traffic patterns changed dramatically because of the COVID situation. So we were actually waiting for traffic to be restored, to kind of get back into its normal rhythm, which took quite a while. So we started in 2020, we're finishing in 2021, and that's really the heart of why it's taken us so long to get this plan in front of you. But we appreciate the opportunity. This is, I'm not sure who's controlling our pages. Is that you, Mike? Okay. You can go ahead and go forward. Some of the things that we begin with in a master plan is we update the socioeconomic data, such as population and employment, and just the composition of who lives here and who comes and does their driving in this area. And some of the things that we changed in the plan, most of the changes that we made, we didn't change the actual structure of the plan, we just updated the information. And I'm going to have Emily go over some of the things that we changed, and she'll talk you through what it is that we've done there.
Hi, so I'm Emily Andrus. I did a lot of the writing and the traffic modeling for this plan. So I just wanted to talk about some of the data that we gathered and then what we updated and how we did that, how we set our baseline for the transportation. So we didn't change anything dramatic about the structure of the plan itself, and so we just updated the numbers, really, is what happened. So what was included in the 2014 study, like you can see on this slide, is the socioeconomic data, which is specifically the number of households per acre, and then the number of employment, like employers, so how many employees are in each area as well. And we updated the road master plan based on kind of our traffic volumes, and we developed a short-term plan and a long-term plan based on what we found there. And then using that short-term plan, we created an impact fee analysis and came up with an impact fee number based on those short-term projects. So you can go ahead and go to the next one, Mike. Thank you. So some of that data that was included, Mike's going to make me do it by memory, and I'm not ready for that, is city traffic counts were done. Andy was in charge of that, and he took counts for us all over the city to get an idea of what our average daily traffic looked like all over the city. We took counts everywhere. We used the current land use plan and the current road master plan, and then we took population estimates and employment projections from both the MPO and the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget, and they update those numbers pretty regularly, and so that's where we got a lot of our population and employment projections. If you go to the next slide, Mike, thanks. So this is just a couple of the charts that we included in the master plan. The one on top shows the population comparisons between Utah and Washington County and Washington City. And these are projections based on census data. And so this might not be 100% exactly what is happening in Washington City right now, but it gives us a good forecasting estimate for up to 2019. And this chart does not include Washington City's population growth, but it compares Washington counties to the Utah average. So Washington County, so the blue line is Washington County, green is the county average, and then the orange is Utah population change, and the yellow is the average for Utah. And so you can kind of get an idea of the trend for Washington County between 1970 and 2018. So more data. There was always more. We also use the city active transportation plan to compare with our roadway plans. And with some of our projects, we would look at the active transportation plan and we would maybe bump that up in the list depending on what was in the active transportation plan. I don't have a good example off the top of my head, but for example, if there was a roadway that was planned to be widened, but in the active transportation plan, it was planned earlier to have bike lanes because of that widening, then we tried to make those correlate in our project list. We also used whatever census data was available and the population estimates, like I mentioned. The traffic data, the traffic crash accident data, comes from UDOT. They have it's called New Metrics, and they have an entire database of all the crashes that have happened. And so we use that to see what are the problem areas in the city and took that into account in our projects as well. And then we used UDOT's bridge inspection reports, which on the next slide, this is really hard to read in this slide because they're so little, but there's a bridge health index is what it's called. And it shows those numbers on this slide. If you have the paper copy, it's a lot easier to read. But with the Bridge Health Index, it's rated on a scale of 100. And between 80 and 100 is considered good. Between 60 and 80 is fair. And below 60 is poor condition for a bridge. Go ahead, Mike, to the next one. Thank you. So this is our traffic model. These are called our traffic analysis zones. And I mentioned the household and employment populations. These are the zones that we use to estimate the household per acre in each zone. And then what the traffic model does is it takes that information and it sees how many people are traveling between the zones. And then it uses a roadway network to assign traffic to those roadways. So on the next few slides, these are the households per acre. And this is 2030, and the next one is 2040, and then 2050. And so Mike, if you just kind of go back and forth between those, you can see where in 2040 and 2050, those green areas start to grow especially north of the freeway, and then also out towards like Long Valley.
Can I ask you a question right there?
Sure.
What matrix did you use to ascertain these?
The zones or the
Like
household
the build out,
populations?
the areas and stuff?
So I need our actual traffic modeler. So that SE data comes from, I think, a lot of different places. We take counts from, or not counts, but estimations from the developments that we know are going in, as well as like census data, things like that to grow those areas where the roadways are being built as well. Does that sound right, Aaron? Yeah. Did I miss anything?
And
So
that's
really-
good. That answers my question.
Yeah, so it takes development into account. Like if we know, for example, like Long Valley that's being built, we can say, this is how many houses they're expecting. That means there's this many people traveling in and out of there. This is how many people they're expected to employ, things like that. So that's where those numbers come from. Okay, if you'll go to the next slide, Mike. So this is our updated road master plan. And Aaron is going to talk more specifically about which projects we recommend and also what has changed since the past one. So I won't go really into detail on this, but Aaron will. And this is just the cover of our master plan, kind of a holding place, so I can say it's Aaron's turn. So Aaron's going to talk about the impact fee analysis and also the project list, and specifically which projects are on there and how we came up with the impact fee. So thank you for your time.
From the last plan in 2014, there have been several projects that have been completed, and that's one of the first things that we did in the 2014 plan is remove the projects in your short-term plan that have been completed, and that's this comprises of many of those. Washington Parkway and Buena Vista bonds have been retired, and those were completed. Washington Parkway Phase 1. Washington worked with UDOT to get that done. Washington Fields Road widening in the Stookie Farms to Warner Valley Road area. Southern Parkway is completed now to SR 9. Merrill Road was one that was been that Mike's been working on very hard for the past couple of years, and Milepost 10 and Milepost 11 concept studies with the Main Street study and the Interchange study. Those have been completed and have paved the way to the strategy to move forward on what to do with those milepost interchanges. This is an example of some of the new projects that have moved into the 5-year plan. 3650 South, that is such a critical east-west connector. It's connecting with 1450 in St. George and getting it all the way through Washington City over to the Southern Parkway, and with an interchange is critical. In our models, it just shows just a tremendous growth of cars on that road. It's like an east-west type of a river road. It's going to be that important just with that many cars using, just kind of emptying out those
Aaron,
areas.
what are the projected numbers on 3650?
I think, if I remember it, there's 25,000 cars a day that's expected in about 2030 to 2040. And that's similar to what is on River Road right now. It might be a little bit less than what's on River Road. River Road's probably closer to 35,000 going over the River Road Bridge. But that's a good question. It rises pretty fast, because I think right now, do we know what the volume is right now, Emily? No, but it's probably in the 6,000 to 7,000 cars a day today. Widening of Buena Vista Boulevard. There's several projects that we're talking about, including in this 5-year plan. So I think there's 4 projects total that just kind of cover certain segments. And as catalysts of development come in, or more volume comes in, then each one will be triggered differently. But just widening that so it is a 5-lane facility instead of the 2 to 3 lane that it is right now. Main Street extending south to Foothill Drive. And Foothill Drive is another one. Foothill Drive from 100 East to St. George city limits, kind of towards the Costco area. So if those two, Foothill Drive, if it's going east-west and makes it into St. George, then Main Street can extend south to Foothill. So it becomes a more complete circulation element for traffic. So you're not relying so much on 300 East and on Telegraph Road. That's becoming quite busy. And so this is kind of a pressure reduction type of a connection that that Industrial Road has been for Washington for several years. And this will serve the same manner. I have here several traffic signals. We have 7 specifically that are targeted to install. And again, this is within the next 6 years. I guess we didn't talk about that. So the 5-year plan starting today will be 6 years at the end of 5 years. So within this 6 years, 7 signals and 3 fiber optic connections. So the fiber optic connections would connect telecommunications from your traffic center to that localized area that's out remote at a signal. So the signals could be monitored. It could be by closed circuit TV, or it could be by detectors. All that data, all that flow of information can make it into a traffic operations center, and changes could be made as issues come up. So those calls could be made to UDOT, and UDOT could take a look at those signals for you and say, yeah, we can change that to make it run smoother or analyze that better for you. Milepost 11 Interchange, that is also on the 5-year plan, and we'll be looking at that. Horrocks is involved in the design of the widening of Milepost 10 to 13. That includes this interchange. So we'll be looking at alternatives for the interchange of putting Interchange 11 in. Long Valley Road, as Emily was saying, this is a development that's occurring. There's a lot of planning going on in Long Valley, and so we estimate that through our models we'll need a portion at least of Long Valley Road in the next 6 years. And Washington Dam Road. Oh, go ahead.
No, Aaron, on Long Valley Road, are we talking like southeast of the actual development, or are we talking through their entire development?
It's through the valley, the whole development, starting from the north at the Southern Parkway, and then just kind of working its way. Depending on the rate of development, it's going to tell us how much we need.
Wasn't that part of their master plan, is to construct that road?
Yeah, it should be.
So why is it in our impact analysis then? It's
not an impact fee requirement to contribute. It's a development road. It's listed here as a road that will be built. So this isn't really targeting how it's going to get funded. This is just targeting that these roads are going to be built in the next 6 years.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. And Washington Dam Road to the east to connect with that Long Valley interchange of the Southern Parkway. And that one is also in the forefront. And that really needs to be completed. It's pretty important. And this is the map that shows up in.
Aaron,
yes.
Can I jump in and just ask you one? And maybe this isn't necessarily a Washington City road yet, but I know north of the river, there's a Purgatory Road that has been planned. Is that not on our plan because it's a county project, or is that maybe further out than the 5 years?
It's barely further out than 5 years. It is on the long-term plan. It isn't necessarily because it's a county road. It really has a lot to do with what the traffic model predicts will be needed as far as capacity goes. Okay. So you want to put your dollars where the capacity issues are happening, and that one not so much right now. Okay. It may be a catalyst. Something else may require it to happen earlier. If development occurs over there, or if annexations occur.
Yeah, we have a final plat on some industrial near that area, and there's a fair amount of residential going on there, and that would tie directly into Long Valley. So, and of course, these plans can change as development builds out. So,
yeah, and it's a very dynamic plan. As you can see, we're updating it every 4 to 5 years. So, with the rate of growth you have in Washington, it does change. And this is a map that's in the master plan. That's the five that shows some of the short-term plans. And here's some added projects that we have in the long-term plan. And you can see Councilman Staley, the Purgatory Road is kind of listed here in this long-term section. But as we talked about, it could go forward into the short term, depending on some catalyst that may require it earlier. Some of these projects that were added to the long term, 4750 South is kind of an east-west south. It's down closer to the city limits to the south towards the airport. That's growing, very important with the development going on in that area. Washington Fields Road from Warner Valley, going south from Warner Valley, where it's kind of terminates at Warner Valley today. This would take it from Warner Valley to the south, to the out of the city limits. And Merritt Way is the frontage road to I-15 on the south side. And there's a lot of planning, a lot of things that are probably going to be happening in that area of development. And Merritt Way is just one of those projects that may be a candidate to move into the short-term plan because of the level of development that may occur in that area. Bullock Street, a connection from Bullock Street to 1100 East to Bluegrass Street. And Warner Valley Road. And Warner Valley Road is, we know that a lot it can happen in Warner Valley. The timing just kind of puts it to make it a long-term plan. And Washington Parkway, phase 2 and phase 3 is just are two steps of widening. One will be widening into a 5-lane section, and the phase 3 will be widening into a wider section when that's needed. And then Industrial Road widening is another one that's also new and on the long-term plan. And this is our map showing where these projects are located, and others. Like I didn't talk about all of them, but that's where several others are. But be happy to talk about any of these projects, short-term, long-term, or any questions you might have about these projects.
Yeah, could I ask you on the Red Cliffs Drive, I guess it is, from where St. George has recently widened, that section from there to Green Springs Drive, any kind of a timeline on that?
Is it Red Hills Parkway?
Red Hills, I'm sorry. Yes,
Red
Red Hills. From there, where St. George just widens, because that's a bottleneck there right now.
Yeah, that section of Buena Vista from the city boundary to Green Springs is probably going to be the first Buena Vista segment to.
Is there enough right of way there for that, or does the I-15 NA fence have to be moved, or do you know?
I think
you got the details yet on that?
I think probably all the widening will have to go towards the freeway and not towards the residences. Right. Is that what you were thinking, Mike?
I mean, that literally takes an act of Congress, as I understand, to move the NA fence.
So that'll be a discussion that council, or a decision that council will have to make. We actually own the right of way clear back in that grassed landscape area. So originally when we widened that was a decision at council at that time that we was not going to take out all the landscaping. We've actually had some discussions with UDOT about moving the NA fence. They're not opposed to it. That's how St. George got the additional width that they needed. But that, when we get to that point, that'll be a decision council have to make if that's the way we want to go. But the right of way is there.
Aaron, I have a couple of questions. Was that so on your 5-year plan? On the 5-year plan, number 3 in priority is Telegraph Street and Green Springs Drive intersection improvements, and then number 4 is the I-15 exit 10 hook ramp and signal. Can you just talk on a high level? What was in mind with those projects?
These aren't really prioritized. First off, I just wanted to.
They're not okay. They're all listed. They're not by.
They're listed, but they're not by priority. I think being an engineer, I have to number things, and these are random numbers, and I'm just matching them from the project to the estimate to the map. So my mind went that way when you first said the priorities.
Yeah, so they're both right there next to each other, but it's the Telegraph Street and Green Springs Drive intersection. And then also you have listed I-15 exit 10 hook ramp and signal. And I just wasn't familiar with that concept.
Yeah, the first one is improvements need to be done at Green Springs and Telegraph. And I don't think I'm too far off by saying it's probably the interchange or the intersection in the entire county that all of us transportation people have our eyes on. We're trying to sort out what can be done without taking lots of big spaces to widen it. But something needs to be done there. And I know that there's been some study that Mike has done and UDOT has done in the past. And I think those solutions are kind of, they're happening. They're coming together to of what that might be. But I think ultimately it's going to have to be some widening occurring. The hook ramp solution is something that we'll be looking at very closely in this I-15 widening from 10 to 13. And the hook ramp is for southbound traffic, so it can off ramp before it gets off at Milepost 10. So it'll get off closer to where the Maverick is going to be. It's not there yet, right? Things happen so fast. I knew that it was coming, but I just didn't know. But in that, they have a driveway next to Maverick, and that would line up with that driveway next to Maverick.
So does it essentially push that traffic coming I-15 south back north onto Buena Vista? Is that how that works? And picturing a hook or what?
Yeah, it's larger and longer vehicles that it's targeting. Some of the larger trucks that come into the industrial area, so they don't, because they have no room in the Milepost 10 area to come off the freeway and then get in line at the signal to turn left on Red Hills Parkway. So it blocks several lanes if you have 105-foot interstate truck. And what this does is gets those trucks out of that traffic stream and moves that pressure over to another location where they have a place to stack up and then get on to Buena Vista.
So that's a UDOT project.
It will be a UDOT project. Mike, do you know if that's been authorized to move ahead, or is that something we're doing right now?
It's moving with the 10 to 13.
Okay, so we'll have to come up with the layout and then propose it and then get their approval. But that's where it's at right now.
Do you anticipate that being after most of Milepost 11 interchange comes about, or before, or
It's the same time.
same time?
Yeah, and we need to look at them at the same time because it's kind of in close proximity to Milepost 11. And so we have to know whether we need to put in an auxiliary lane or not, which is a lane that accelerates off of 11 and then would get immediately back off again at the hook ramp without actually weaving into the general purpose lanes. So we would need to analyze both of those at the same time.
Any additional questions?
Yes, just a couple, Mayor. Just making sure Councilman Staley was done. As I read through the report, I've got to admit I set out to read all 108 pages. I got to about 54, and it was very well done, well written. I was intrigued with a couple of things though. First being pedestrian friendly. Those are good words. I like them. Walking bike paths, lanes in an interconnected system. I've took up riding bicycles on our city and St. George paths and bike lanes several months ago, and I've really come to know personally how those connections are so important. If you're riding and all of a sudden it ends and you're in no man's land and there's cars on both sides. So just a question, I hope this doesn't seem menial, but how do you know that they're interconnected? Do you actually ride or walk the trails to verify that they are, or is it just, I'm really quite interested in that, because there could be a real problem if there was something that was overlooked, well-meaning, but if it were overlooked.
Yeah, and that activity probably, I was on the team for the active transportation study, and we did a lot of that. We would go out and we would walk the paths, find out where the lanes were, took a lot of photos. So that is kind of comprehensively in that plan. So that has been done before this plan came along. But we stopped and talked to a lot of people that are using it and say, where do you see the gaps, and how do you feel about how Washington is dealing with biking and pedestrians? So that was a different project, but that's what we would do if we were doing that today.
And Councilman Staley serves on that active transportation committee, and I know that we'll stay up on that. But my last question is, since 2013, when our last transportation plan was completed, the one major addition was an airport and roads to feed it to and from, and a build out of residential and commercial around it. Would you talk for a moment about what that transportation looks like going forward as it pertains to in and around the airport? I did read what you have in here, but if you just have more details, I'd appreciate knowing what those are.
Yeah, I think when the airport went in, I think a lot of us had planned on more rapid growth going on around the airport. It was a real crystal ball element there that we really didn't know. We knew what would happen in some of the fields areas with growth because we were used to that. We know that there was a lot of need for residential in some areas. We really didn't know how the market would react to around the airport, and it's starting to show evidence of some things being built. So a lot of the projects that kind of connect to the airport are long range projects because of that slower growth, but it could pick up in the next 5 years. We don't know. We'll kind of watch it closely.
It's a little bit of a moving target. I understand that.
Yeah.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then last comment is the document in our folder was listed as a draft copy. If there's any changes to that, could we make sure that we get any changes for the final draft?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Okay. This is the list of projects, the short term, meaning the next 6 years. We have 32 projects listed that are of kind of an important priority. And a lot of these are development driven. They're not so much traffic driven. So we do have a column here that talks about how much impact fee would participate in some of these roads, and there are several roads that are 0% because they are driven by development and not by the impact of growth due to growth as time goes on, if that makes some sense. But we did find that there were about $17.7 million worth of impact fees that we needed to generate for the city to contribute to building these 32 projects. And so that's the number that we then use. Go ahead, Mike, you can go to the next one. That's what helped us with our impact fee study. So after we get our list of projects, we go to our impact fee study. After listing our projects, we determine the impact fee eligible amount, $17.75 million. And then we calculated the number of permits. We kind of look ahead to see what kind of building permit activity are we going to have in the future, because those building permits have to pay for these impact fees, and it has to pay for the 17 million. So that was our exercise that we did in looking at the building permit history and just kind of carrying that history and that rate forward, and then kind of projecting about how many what the impact fee would be based on that. And we also, I don't know why the word also is on top of what I'm reading. We also updated the traffic trip generation rates, because there's new ITE trip generation rates that come out every so often. And so we updated that was in the study before. Mike? And the process that we did, it's a pretty simple process. If you had a city of just single family homes, it would be kind of easy. We would take the $17 million and we would look at how many homes would be built in the next 6 years, and we divide those 17 million, or those numbers of homes, by the 17 million, and everybody would have a certain amount. But you have a lot of commercial that also needs to pay their fair share. So what we do is we take a look at commercial businesses, and we come up with a single family equivalent. So in this example I use here, if we have a 5,000 square foot medical building, that's equivalent to 18 homes of traffic. It probably doesn't correlate with sewer and with water and everything else, but with traffic it does. So we kind of project the future commercial uses. We estimate the single family equivalents of those commercial uses, but also the new homes that we would expect. And then we would come up with a number of single family equivalents in the next 6 years. We projected, the last bullet there, we projected that the city would experience about 6,000 single-family equivalents of growth in the next 6 years. So that's the critical number. We use the 6,000 home equivalents. If you were just building homes, we think about 6,000. We divided that into the 17 million to come up with the fee. Some of the, when you have a department store that's out in the middle of nowhere and it's the only store, that's a primary trip for somebody. When they leave their home or they leave their work, they'll go straight to that store and they come back. That's 2 trips, 1 trip in, 1 trip back. If there's a Kohl's and you have your Red Robin and your In-N-Out Burger and all the other uses, somebody would go to Kohl's, and then on their way out, they might drop by and grab an In-N-Out Burger. So that no longer becomes the In-N-Out. The In-N-Out is not a primary trip. It's kind of a secondary trip. So you still have 2 trips, 1 in, 1 out. But when we're calculating the number of trips, that we predict for the roads, we just have to be careful that we don't double or triple count trips. So we don't count 2 trips to Kohl's, 2 trips to In-N-Out, 2 trips to Red Robin. So what a primary trip adjustment is in our adjustments are, there are some types of businesses, such as banks, fast food restaurants, car washes, that aren't primary trips. Those are secondary trips. So we're just careful about making sure that when a new car wash comes in, that you're not charging all of the trips that are generated by their driveway, but they get some kind of an adjustment. They get some kind of a percentage off, because that's not really why people are on the public streets, to go get their car washed. They're doing other things and getting their car washed. I hope that was understandable, but just to let you know, there is that element of just making sure we're not double and triple counting some trips. So this is kind of the conclusion of what we're doing here. There's $105 million of transportation improvements overall in the next 20 years. And per the impact fee law, we can apply impact fees for the projects in the next 6 years. And that equals 17.75 million. And our recommended fee is $2,941 per single family equivalent. And the trend of that, because you're probably ready for a chart or a graph. Why don't you do the next one? This is the trend of what the transportation impact fee has been since 2007. It's hovered around 3,000, but it was $31.59. It's $31.59 today, and we're proposing $29.41, which is a 17% decrease. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Oh, 7% decrease, 17.
So I have a question that's a little bit conceptual and maybe off the topic of the actual increase, but we get a lot of comments about the speed of the roads that people travel. How does the speed of the road factor into the transportation model? For instance, if we took Main Street and we did traffic calming measures, how does that impact your model? Does it increase it, decrease it? Is it about volume, or does speed play a factor?
No, the model definitely is sensitive to that. You need to let the model know that road now has a decreased speed or decreased if it's a water model, you say it's going to be a smaller pipe, so less water can go down that pipe. It's the same principle, it's the same type of model.
Okay.
So yeah, you tell it there's more resistance on that route, and it will push cars in other directions.
So when you're producing the plan, you actually produce the type of road that you are modeling based on the speed of that road. So you're planning for a certain
Yes.
size and speed.
Yeah, in the roadway network, we tell the model what kind of road that is. If it's a major arterial, it knows what speed it can be, it knows how big it can be. If it's a local residential street, it knows that it's much smaller and much slower.
Thank you.
So if I could, and this might be, this is just a general question. So the approval of the master transportation update is an approval of the fees as well, right? Or an adjustment of the fees?
Can you go back to those fees again?
Oh, to my chart?
So I'm all about reducing fees. I'm just worried that we haven't accounted for the inflation we're dealing with right now. So I'm concerned we're dropping our fees, but based on this report, we have to go to 2941. We can't keep to our current standard, correct?
Well, it's a 2021 estimate, so it's using today's
Is
unit
updated
costs.
to today's,
Yeah,
oh,
the
all right, that's different.
the prior years were those prior year.
Well,
estimates.
I know you started it in 2020, and
We did.
I just wanted to make sure that we were accounting for any of the inflation we're seeing.
Yeah, the estimates were taken, we did those in, I think it was in August or September. So they're last summer.
Then it's a good thing.
It is a good thing.
That's right. Any additional questions? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Appreciate that. Great update. Okay, move on to item 3, update on secondary water. Captain Shaw. Or Captain Lester.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I was asked to give you guys a little bit of an update with where we're at with the irrigation master plan, with some of the things that are going on with the development up north of Washington Parkway, potentially some of the components that are mixing in with that, with the development being proposed, and what we could potentially accommodate for that development to provide for their irrigation needs, as well as the irrigation needs of a large portion of the remainder of the city. This has been ongoing. I think we're working on the 3rd potential irrigation master plan since I've started here. Wanted to give you guys a little bit of an update. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to look at some of the stuff that I provided to you in the packets. Probably the best exhibit would be the one that shows the phasing potentials for what we're currently looking at. Part of what we're looking at with this is we've got our existing irrigation sources that are being currently used for flood irrigation in the old part of town. We've also got the well 1 irrigation source that is being used pretty much exclusively on the ball fields in the cemetery. With the proposed development that's coming in up north of Washington Parkway, and I believe that's the zone changes on your agenda for tonight for approval. Part of what they're looking at as well is they are looking to be on board with us. If we can figure out a way to come up with a municipally operated irrigation system, they are able to get out of, I believe it's 50% of the Conservancy District's impact fee. What they're looking to do is take that same funding that they would be putting to the Conservancy District and put that toward our municipal system. So it'll be kind of a partnership with the proposed development. By doing that, kind of what the concept has grown to, because we don't have enough water to provide them with their irrigation needs, as well as our existing irrigation users, and to also provide for some of the new dry system that's been put in over the past what are we, about 6 years now, that dry system's been going in. So we looked at, pull up that other map, Mike, that's got the colors on it. We looked at, okay, how can we provide enough water? You know, if we don't have it currently available to provide for our existing users, as well as this proposed new development that potentially eliminates basically them helping us to build this system. So we expanded our look to bring online some of the canal company water. We don't currently have any shares. We've got several offers out there to purchase some shares out of the canal company. And the thought process is, with the development proposal north of Washington Parkway, they're proposing to provide some large storage reservoirs. Them reservoirs would be at an elevation that was suitable not only to serve their development, but to serve other portions of Washington City, both north of the river as well as south of the river, in the long term.
Hey, Lester, can I back you up just a little
Yes.
bit on that? So I didn't realize that Washington City does not have water shares from the canal.
No, we do not have any as of today.
I think I just always assumed that we had some or have some, but so maybe my first question, as I'm thinking this through quickly, is, you know, how much water is it going to take from the canal
Correct.
to pump up to these storage ponds that you're talking about, and are there shares to be purchased for that purpose?
There are.
There's always shares to be purchased for the right price.
Right.
55% are already publicly owned, and by constitution, those entities aren't really allowed to divest themselves of it. But yeah, there's 45% that are private and then technically available if the market can meet the.
So is it reasonable to think that we would be able to acquire enough shares to put into this secondary system?
Yes, and that's part of what I'm trying to.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
I've
just
got as part of this update is kind of the concept behind taking the Old Town irrigation system, the springs, the well one water that we've got. The concept behind it is to also take some of the canal company water, which is a brackish water. It's not really suitable for today's irrigation expectation. Everyone wants to be able to sprinkle with it, have their plants grow from it, rather than the sprinkling kill the plants. So, you know, some of the technicalities of that are, it's pretty much a 50-50 mix. So if we can take the canal company water, the brackish water that we've got there, mix it with our high quality irrigation water that we currently already have the rights to, we basically doubled our current irrigation water with the brackish water, with a suitable water for the expectation irrigation as a whole. So because we currently own good quality water, we could take the canal company and double that capacity if we can get our hands on them shares. We've currently got several shareholders that are pretty significant shareholders that they're considering an offer at $5,500 a share. That's pretty much the going rate down here right now. Carl Larson from Stookie Farms down there, for example, has 31 shares that we've approached him on. The Segmiller family has about 35 shares as well. We've approached them. We've contacted the Staley family a little bit. They've got a significant number of shares. We've also, there's a few more that are just recently transferring into development. The developers are more than open to entertain an offer for purchase.
So how many water shares do you think it's going to take? I mean, is that hard to quantify, or?
We've actually gotten that far with it. So if you take a look at the exhibit that Mike's got pulled up, we've got it broken into two areas. The blue is phase 1. The northern area is 1A. The southern area would be 1B, just in sequence of potentially the areas that could be served. And then we have phase 2, which is the pink areas. Same thing there. The northern area would be phase 2A, the southern area phase 2B. Them areas and the designations were taken based upon not only the existing users, that we need to keep them whole, we need to keep them with irrigation water and keep that available to them. But because of the proposal from the developers, we also need to provide their needs as well. as part of that. So that would be the 1A phase. The 1A phase currently, we've got that figured in with a kind of a two-prong approach. We would take the well one, the existing well one that is feeding the ball fields and the golf course. We would pull that water from that well. It's assumed that we're going to be able to get 1,000 gallons a minute out of that well. We've got some really old test pump data that said it produced 1,200 gallon a minute. I'm going to be getting some quotes from a driller probably within the next month as to what it would cost us to drop a test pump in there and see what it would produce today. Because the documents we're looking at are back in the 60s when it was test pumped, and we're not certain that it's capable of producing that kind of water. So we need to verify that. So we've looked at that and assumed that it will produce 1,000 gallons a minute based upon what we have. And if we were to take that 1,000 gallons a minute and mix it 50-50 with canal company water, we would need 181 shares from the canal company. We'd take the water from the canal company, put it into a settling reservoir to get the sediments, whatever muds we could out of it, some of the floating debris in a settling pond down off of wherever the connection were to occur. We've kind of drawn it in there off of Indian Springs, basically as quick as we can get to the canal. We'd take that water up to the reservoir site, north of Washington Parkway, intermingle the well one water with it on the way, so that once it hits the reservoir, it mixes in the reservoir, and then we would pull it back out in a gravity distribution system that, you know, in the long term, it would have some small pumps on it, that kind of stuff, to get it back out to the existing users as well as the developed area up there. So that's kind of where we're at currently, with the overall, you know, big picture look that we've taken at it. I provided you with an engineer's estimate that's in your packets as well. It is not inexpensive to get to that 1A concept. And it wouldn't be just the 1A on the estimate, it would be the 1A as well as the 1B scenario. But 1B would require additional irrigation shares. We would have to increase that to 229 irrigation shares. And at that point, we would pull in the warm springs and potentially any of the other springs that didn't have adverse impacts from pumping well one that hard. So that's, in a nutshell, big picture, that's kind of where we're at. And would like a little bit of direction from council.
Lester, will you just talk about why a pressurized secondary water system is so important to our culinary drinking water system and our overall stewardship of water?
Yes. Ultimately, what it boils down to, we've got, it's pretty close to 50% of the water that is used by a residential home is used for outdoor landscaping. Our current irrigation system, albeit a flood system, is very wasteful of that irrigation water. So in theory, we're wasting probably 50% of the irrigation water that we have. If we can get it into a pressurized irrigation system, we've doubled it there, as well as we have reduced our impact on the culinary system by 50%. For any existing users that are currently using culinary water for irrigation purposes, their consumption would reduce by about 50%, as well as their irrigation consumption. If they're on the old flood irrigation system, the true gallonage consumption, which we don't know what that is because we don't have metering systems on the flood system, all of the studies, all of the research that you do, it's about a 50% waste in the flood irrigation system. Water right now, in everybody's mind, you know, we just attended the Water Summit last night. I think that kind of got very clear to everybody. In Southern Utah, water that's our lifeblood. Without it, we're not going to continue with what we've got today, and eventually we're going to run out. And
Lester, so I know we have some individuals curious about what's going to happen to you've referred to Old Town, the flood irrigation system. So you just go through that, both short-term and long-term. How does this system affect what they're currently doing?
Okay, so conceptually right now, where we're at with the thought process of the existing Old Town irrigation system is and all the rumors from the old timers stated that when they pumped well one to its full production, the springs began to dry up. So all of the springs that are up in the old city yard, the ones that are up in the Warm Springs area, a lot of the old irrigation system, them springs began to lose production rates. And that's the reason that they quit pumping well one as heavy as they did. So kind of in the back of our mind, we've got in there that when we start to pump well one to a higher production
You're
rate.
tempted to believe the theory?
And it makes sense. The theory really does make sense because the existing static water level in well one is extremely high. And there is a lot of water down there. So if you take the static water elevation, which is pressurized up here, and that's what's discharging vertically from the springs down below, if we take that water level that's up here and we pull it down where it's no longer providing the pressure for the springs to discharge, it very well could happen. So what our concept is right now is that we would pump well one, we would get that up to the reservoir site, get the pressurized irrigation system brought back down into the old part of town. Primary focus would be then at that point to get that pressurized water back up to the original locations where all of the existing irrigation ditches are being fed today, so that we could discharge that water back, which we now just doubled because we mixed it with canal company water, discharge that back in the short term so they can continue as is while we continue to march through
So those that are flood irrigating now would continue to flood irrigate, and that's the short
term.
That's the short term.
The short term.
Okay.
The long term would be that we, when we did Main Street, we put in a pressurized irrigation system on Main Street. It's sitting there ready to go right now today. That would provide pressurized irrigation, a metered connection to every property that's along Main Street. Part of the concept behind that was we now have that backbone started. We could systematically expand that backbone and gradually remove the flood irrigators off in exchange for a pressure irrigation connection.
And those individuals who are on it, they have it, and they don't want to move to a pressurized system, would they be able to continue as long as they decide to opt out of a pressurized system?
That's going to be a decision the council's going to have to make as we go down this road to a pressurized solution. But in the interim, to get this started, that's a starting point. We have a kind of a stopgap scenario to say this buys us some time to make some additional decisions, have some additional conversations, and figure out a solution for the overall.
And there is some, anybody familiar with water in the area, they know that there's some real legal technicalities and some difficulties that stretch back for a lot of years, where the city is prepared to enter in and straighten that stuff out and make sure all the everything is done legally.
Yeah, there's going to be, especially within the old downtown Washington, these the users that are on the existing system, we're going to have to do something. We haven't nailed down what that is, how that's going to work. That's going to be decisions, and there's going to be a lot of them that need to be made as we proceed with this.
Unless there's it correct, the engineer estimates of expenses doesn't contemplate any of that, correct? All of that would be a future phase?
Yes, that'd be future phase stuff. This is basically just the backbone to get the storage facilities, the sources in place, and get this to begin. Because where it's at right now, we can't even get it to begin. And I think everybody acknowledged that we need it to happen. This would be a huge component in the conservation concept as to how can we stretch our existing water.
And today's presentation is just an update on what current thinking, where we're, in the direction we're currently going.
Correct. And if
Do we know
if
when?
you guys think that we need to go a little bit of a different direction, if you want us to explore some additional concepts, ideas, questions that you've got.
Well, I know personally, I would like us to have that pretty well locked in as far as what agreements we're going to make to those users in the Old Town who are currently flood irrigating, and what they can expect options wise, short term and long term, and what they're going to have, what they'll be able to opt in or opt out of. I'd like to have that pretty well done. So we're not saying, well, some future council has to decide and figure that out. It's been an issue that we've known about for a lot of years. I think we ought to just, get in and make that determination.
Well, and the reality is that that's been the same component that's delayed this for as many years as it has. It's that particular component.
I don't think you can say that. Political will and expense have been what's delayed it. We haven't had a viable option that is
correct.
Made it look like we were going to go. I'd be really reluctant to say that.
That's kind of where we're to today. We can see that this is potentially a viable option. That's something that could really happen. If we continue down that road.
See, I kind of look at it as, if there's people that want to keep having flood irrigation, we'll stub a pipe to their house and they can flood irrigate their yard.
Well,
they
that's
just
what we're
don't
doing
have to
short
get
term.
up
Yeah.
at 2 a.m. and go chase the water, right? Like now we'll just pipe it to their house instead of ditch it to their house. I see it the same way, and you can choose if you want to be. I think there's very few. You'd have to tell me that if that's the case, how many are out there that actually are flood irrigating their property still?
All I know is the ones that are very well balanced. That water therapy is good for a soul.
Well,
it is. It's and it's kind of baked into the culture and of the area, and I think it's important to know. And that's why I say I don't want to see us do something this large and kick that can. And I guess I'm not really talking so much to this side of the rostrum as this side of the rostrum, to say that I think we need to have that solved so people can respond to that and decide yes or no, I like that or I don't like that, or I'm going to remember that 4 years from now and make a vote to change it or do whatever.
The other component, kind of in reference to what Councilman Coates had to say there as well, is we've got this isolated location that we have the existing flood irrigation that's in place today. The short-term solution would be to leave that as is for today. But in the meantime,
well, I'm not saying that is the plan.
Right.
Currently, yes.
That is the current plan. But in the meantime, while that occurs, and we're still providing them with the exact same service that they're getting now, the service wouldn't change. We can take and expand the irrigation system and get all of this new growth that we've experienced. We've got existing infrastructure that's in the ground that is going unused, that is currently drawing on the culinary system. If we could take this irrigation water and get this irrigation system started, even on the surrounding area that doesn't include the core group, with all of the questions and the flood irrigation and all of them other questions, we can expand it and we can expand the use of our culinary water.
And I see that we want to move forward, we want to be proactive, but it's a component that's been there. It's not something that's going to surprise us. We ought to at least make a step. Now, if some future council decides they want to modify that because things have changed, that's going to be up to them. But I think, I don't think it just wouldn't be responsible for us to ignore it at this point. Yes, but from your side, yes, let's move forward. Let's keep looking at those options and seeing what we're going to do with that.
And I think that keep looking at options is really interesting. Staff's not asking council to make any decisions on this, just to continue to sanction the effort to explore and plan and try and design for when we may need to make the decisions. The interesting thing, though, is we've had a lot of news about regional secondary water ideas, and the canal we would pull from is the same canal the water district would pull from. The reservoir they would settle water in sits right next to our city boundary, right? And so it may be that as staff work and plan and think that other regional opportunities that might come around as well. And so again, we're not asking any decisions on that,
Well, so,
But
so are you kind of alluding to that maybe the water district may, once we build this, they may want to actually buy it from us and maintain it or send water into it or?
I'm alluding to, they have publicly mentioned a regional
Secondary, yeah.
reservoir and line, and there's no city that has more secondary water resource than ours.
Yeah.
And they're talking about pulling from the same canal as we're talking about pulling from. They're talking about building the reservoir right next to our city, and so there's just a lot of factors that appear to be consistent with the same concept, which is let's promote conservation by providing viable secondary irrigation water to as many houses as we can, so that outdoor watering doesn't use the treated culinary water. Right? It's the same concept, same conservation mindset. And I'm not saying that opportunity exists today, but with as quickly as water conservation and water conversation is happening around here, that might become something that we deal with. And when we do, the council will be involved.
Lester, talk about funding. Is this something that with the process that we are going through now, the impact fees that we've already collected, that we have a good base, or are we looking at a bond, or what would be the funding mechanism?
Well, right now, and that's part of what's pushing this along. We've got a developer that's on board to help provide quite a bit of the funding conceptually. We don't have enough. We haven't dug into the weeds far enough with all this and nailed it down far enough to say, yeah, that developer is going to provide a portion of that funding. But they've made it very clear to us that they are well aware that they've got $5,000 per unit that potentially could be available to help fund this. They've already offered up some reservoir sites. They've offered to take the funding that they would be giving to the Conservancy District and put it this direction.
Do we even have an irrigation impact fee?
We do not.
Okay.
That would be the driving force behind getting this master plan in place.
60/40 with some of the infrastructure, then potentially bonding for the program, or
Possibly there's some Water Smart grants out there. We might be able to get on board with some of the
we
NRCS
may have
funding, but
some funding coming into the city from other avenues. Okay.
yeah, the Conservancy District has offered to be a partner with this. So what that really means,
Thad made
I
a
don't
good
know.
point with the potential of the Warner Valley Reservoir. I mean, if that comes, does this complement that program, or do we just need to coordinate with the district?
It would be complementary to it. It's the exact same concept that they're looking to do with Warner Valley is what we're looking to do here as well. It's
They
all
have
about
trunk lines
blending and
that go
taking
further west and
taking that brackish Virgin River water that we've got and being able to make use of it somewhere. I mean, it is wet water. It's not quality drinking water, but it is wet water. If we can figure out a way to make use of it with a 50-50 blend of good water, we just doubled it. We just doubled our good water with brackish water.
And before we get too far away from Councilman Staley's question on how to fund this, are we watching to see where we think this will come out as far as price per gallon to the residents?
That will happen as we start to finalize the master plan. We've got to get the projects figured out first. This is what we would need to do that, to be able to provide water to each household.
We don't have any
as they
kind of
come in.
estimates at this point on just keeping an eye on that. I mean, it would be a difficult thing to say, we're going to do all this expense, we're going to put all this together. Your culinary water is going to be this price, and your secondary water is going to be this price.
Right.
Right.
And we don't believe it'll come out that way. We firmly believe that the secondary water is going to be less money than the culinary water. But until we can look at the big picture and say, this is a doable overall project plan, we've got to look at reservoir sites, transmission lines, that kind of stuff. Okay, this would provide the ability to service the community as a whole. Once we can get to that point, we can put an estimate to the overall, and then we can come back and say, this is the cost per gallon. And this is the impact fee associated with it.
Well, and I know this is important. I mean, even as the rest of the state looks at us and we consider using state resources and other things to do things down here, it's surprising to some of those folks that we don't yet have secondary water here, because they've had it for years.
Right.
And they're looking at us in an even drier portion of the desert and not having that. So it can't even prohibit our ability to use resources that are even available in the state.
Yeah. Agreements.
All right, you looking for direction?
Maybe one quick clarification, Mayor. Lester inferred to a developer that developer's agreements are on your agendas for tonight, and the development agreement discusses secondary water. It doesn't obligate the city at all to even build a secondary water system, but it says that if the city does, then it includes some provisions. One of those provisions would be the developer would cooperate. The developer would essentially provide to the city rights of way and land costs, but there isn't a provision that says the developer would provide any cash. And the city would reimburse the developer for planning, engineering, and construction costs. And so as the agreement stands today, the developer wouldn't satisfy any of the expenses that are listed in there other than land and right-of-way acquisition. They would do the construction and be reimbursed for that, though.
Thank you.
That's in the
PCD
development agreement
agreement.
itself, the PCD development agreement? Okay.
Yeah.
Not because we're doing,
And so it's linked to secondary water plans, but it's independent of the presentation, really.
Thank you, Lester, unless there's additional questions.
No, I just have a comment. I learned something tonight, Mr. Segmiller. The reason why someone would want to go in the middle of the night to chase that irrigation water. I never could understand why my dad and my uncle were fighting the city of St. George for making it convenient for them. But it must go back to that.
well, the other thing is there's no better time to count your cockroaches than to go out with a headlamp at that point.
And all of the trash that comes in, from irrigation, yeah. So thank you for that understanding.
I would like to remind the council, if I could, the district asked for you as a group to come up with an acceptable percentage of turfed areas on residential. If you guys would like to just drop me an email or
I thought we were going to put that on the next council agenda. Is that?
We had kicked around the idea of having,
Oh no, a special meeting. That's what you.
yeah, that's what we had talked about.
Yeah.
We've got some ideas. I've been writing down a few things, so I think we can get together and.
So,
do
but I
that,
do
Lester.
think we
If you guys
gotta
have
kind
got
of
any
agree on
questions
when
or
and
anything,
where.
feel free to get in touch with me. I mean, I can walk you through
Okay.
kind of some of the thought process that's gone on to date and where things are at. And
Good.
Mayor, is that something you think we can do, is get a special meeting set up to
Sure, do it
discuss that?
between December 8th and this 14th. Because I'll be gone.
Well, I think, what did we commit to time-wise on that, to get that number back?
I don't think we committed to anything.
We didn't. They said just
we gave a
by the middle
deadline.
of
Room full of
January.
legislators and no commitment, what?
I just thought, I don't even
I
know
think
if
it
we
was
need a
the end of
special
January.
meeting, but the next
I don't know if you need a
workshop,
really special meeting about it.
unless you want one, but I thought the next workshop.
heads
would be
together.
work.
The next workshop? Is that Councilman Kress, or Staley?
Say
Is it-
again?
They were talking about the next workshop meeting.
Can we just do it at the next workshop?
I've been
Tara,
thinking
put it
about
on
this
the
all
next
day,
workshop, will
so
you?
I've got some ideas I'd like to get with each of you. And
Sure.
Right? Okay.
Thanks, Lester.
Let me know if you need me to
Okay.
provide you with anything.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Lester.
We need to move on. Item 4, review the Green Springs PCD development agreement.
Mayor and council, thank you for your time. There's item 4 and 5 are related. One was the development agreement, the other was the memorandum of understanding. Item 5, we're going to remove. The concept there was we would enter a memorandum of understanding with Sitla for identification and sale of the sites of the fire station and the power substation.
So you're saying we're removing 5?
Yes, because of this explanation, we've essentially made so much progress that we've got them identified and talking price, and the sale is just in the process of being worked through. And so the idea that we need an agreement to agree to sell stuff to us that we already have identified and are talking price for is just redundant. And so because of that, we've removed from the development agreement any reference of SITLA or the applicant providing a fire station or a power substation site, because we've made so much progress along that line. Any questions about that? So that's, you'll notice that the development agreement doesn't include any of that language, and it originally did. And the MOU element is, there's nothing to approve. We've essentially moved beyond that and are identifying the site location. If you want to know the locations, the power station would be on the north side of exit 13, at the location that some of you have discussed in your closed sessions. The fire station would be along the parkway there at the location that you've discussed in your closed sessions. And so we've reached agreement with them on both of those. We've discussed price. You'll of course need to approve that in an appropriate session, but yeah, we've made that much progress.
Okay. I think it's fair to say that we're very pleased with where we ended up, and SITLA's been a willing partner to help us take care of some of these needs. So I think you'll be very pleased.
Yeah, what we did is we essentially moved it out of the purview of the applicant. We went direct with SITLA, and progress was rapid and effective. Councilman Staley, did you have a question there?
Just maybe comments, a little bit of thought. So it looks like basically, as far as impact fee credit, we're talking secondary water, we're talking trails.
Secondary water, no. We don't have any impact fees for secondary water, so there's be no credit there. Their credit would
water
be
impact fee with the Conservancy District for our secondary water system. Yes, the large public park, and then public trails. It sounds like maybe the extent of the and trailheads, essentially, right?
So
is that usual and customary to give those impact fee credits if they build to city standards?
They would have the same usual and customary impact fee credit opportunities as any other developer, which would be they would have to build capital projects that we have projected and planned and used to substantiate our impact fees. And if they built that and we inspected it and accepted it, upon acceptance, they could qualify for a credit towards the fee that we would bill them had they not built it.
Well, I appreciated reading through the development agreement, because it really just clarified to me and really kind of simplified what the developer is bringing to the community. Is they're bringing the opportunity for a secondary system via the Conservancy District and that impact fee. They're bringing a large public park that's part of our master parks and rec plan, and they're bringing a part of our trail system and trailheads. Other than that, most of the amenities seem to be privately owned, privately paid for,
or privately required that we haven't planned for. A good example would be sewer lines. We give impact fee credit for sewer trunk lines in certain locations. But if I'm correct, Mike, we don't have a capital facility plan that calls for the construction one out there. So they're going to have to build that themselves. Yeah. And so they'll still have that expense, but they won't get a credit for it. Is that accurate, Mike? I do want to be clear. Their credit opportunities are not unique to them. Those would be available to any developer. Nothing in this agreement is an offer that wouldn't be extended to other developers in similar situations. But the purpose of the agreement, because it's 570 acres and 2,200 residential units and another 200,000 square feet of commercial space for a contract that could last 40-something years, we want to get all of that specified in writing, because there'll be a lot of minds that have to, make decisions in 10, 20, and 30 years about who gets credits for what. And so this contract will be the research and the reliance of how to answer those questions in the future.
So speaking of, I lost my train of thought. What were we talking about? We're talking about impact fees. Oh yes, you're talking about putting it in writing.
Yep.
The one comment that I appreciated that was brought up the other night, I think Councilman Ivey brought this up too, was access to those public trails and trailheads during the construction process. I didn't notice anywhere specifically where that was part of the agreement here. How do we make sure that that's understood and can happen to the extent possible?
I know that's been discussed extensively. In essence, any road that's a public road, they can't limit public access to public roads. They have to allow public access, so they may need to reroute or sign and post and kind of manage it, but they can't limit access to public roads and publicly accessible sites.
And is the approval of the PCD or the consideration approval of PCD or consideration potential approval of this development agreement the right place to put maybe a time element on those trailheads, right? Because it'd be unfortunate to have those trailheads inaccessible for a long period of time over which such a large project builds out.
Absolutely, yeah. The council could certainly make that an element of their approval. And so this is 40 pages of contract language that incorporates the 300 and something pages of the PCD plan. That
and is it fair to say most of this is fairly standard, but you've dialed it in with them too?
Yeah, so this has been through probably 35 to 40 days of attorneys back and forth and 2 different in-person meetings with representatives and attorneys. The purpose here is to define rights, define the bargain and the negotiation, and to provide a structure within which they can modify the agreement, amend it. It can be assigned to other contractors or developers. What it doesn't remove from the city council any of its rights to review each of their phases and each of their plats for both on the staff level or the legislative level. And so the council will have the same involvement with all of their phases that you have with every other development. It doesn't change any of the laws and standards and guidelines that we apply to other developments today. And so it doesn't give them any special treatment under the law, doesn't give them any special treatment under the process.
So one section that I was reading through was this administrative amendments. And it talks about the administrator being able to modify the design guidelines that affect only aesthetic components of the project, and also to approve, in regards to parcel density, intended use modifications of the intended uses, densities, or parcel configuration. And I'm just wondering, how does that play into? I mean, first of all, who is the administrator? Is that the community development director in our city? And is this typical, or do these typically come back to the council if they're? I know in some respect you have certain densities that have been approved, but I just don't know how material this could change, because all of these elements have been such a big part of the conversation of what we're looking at.
Yeah, so you're reading in paragraph 22. Definition 1.2, administrator defines it as means the person designated from time to time by the city as the administrator of this agreement. So the council gets to determine who that is. I think that what we're saying is for small administrative amendments, the council doesn't want to hear those for 40 years, right? For PCD amendments, for amendments to the agreement, the council would be part of that. But for small administrative amendments, these are just the small details that the 300 pages of the plan are not able to even ferret out because they haven't designed it to that specificity yet. But yeah, the council would designate who that administrator is. We've talked internally among staff about who that might be, but yeah, it's ultimately a council decision.
And we would have to appoint a person specifically, or a title, somebody's title?
Correct. You would need to tell staff who the administrator is. Now, staff will recommend to you who that should be, but yeah, that would be a council decision.
We're thinking Lester, I think.
Lester declined that offer already. Probably in our development office is where we would think that would reside, but yeah, that's a discussion the council can have. Any questions? Anything else about the terms or the conditions?
Let me make one more comment about the trailheads, because I think this is important. One of our original discussions with Brooke and GWC was not building the initial trailhead that we had planned and even bid out as part of the project. And the commitment at that stage was that they would do everything they possibly could to keep those trailheads open as much as possible during construction. Now, I think that's still that was our agreement at the very beginning, and I think the council was willing to pull that trailhead back in exchange for that. But it's not necessarily memorialized in the agreement, but I just want to make sure that everybody recognizes that is part of the agreement, or part of the plan.
It's just an interesting element, like on the Dam Road project, the construction company wanted to close it down. It'd be so much easier and better and faster to just close it for a time. But as a city, we can't allow closure of public access. We just can't. We always have to advocate for public access. And so there may be impact upon the access by construction, rerouting and things, but if they were to close it and make that prolonged, they would be in hot water with the city.
Well, and if you're building on what Jeremy said, is, we have current access. We had a plan to build. We actually had partnership with the county funding to build that trailhead. So, and so we understand that this will move the Elephant Arch trailhead, but
Our position is the current access is not by permission. It's a public right of way. It's been continuously and used for enough time that is a public right to get there. And to modify it and to amend it while construction activities happen, we can work with, but to close it and just limit public access, that would be a problem with the city.
Mm-hmm.
Any additional questions? Thank you, Thad. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And then again, on item 5, I believe you can just consider that discussed or remove it.
Okay, thank you. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn for 5 minutes.
So moved.
Second, Councilman Ward.
I take a 5-minute break. It's also streamed on washingtoncity.org/meetings. I've asked Councilman Bundy if he will give us our invocation, and Councilman Coates if he will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
And we bow before thee this evening, express gratitude for the opportunity we have to be here in this city council setting. We're grateful for those who have gone before us and made our community what it is today, began the process of the great heritage that we are familiar with here in our city. We're grateful for the opportunity we have to govern ourselves and for the Constitution of this land and the state of Utah that allows us to be here and to be able to make decisions that are directly related to our residency here in this community. We pray for thy guidance and direction this evening as we contemplate the things that are before us, that we will make those decisions that are in the whole the best for the community. And we ask for these things in favor, thank thee for the many blessings that we enjoy. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen.
Please rise and repeat after me.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate that. I entertain a motion to approve the agenda. We need to remove item 10A.
So moved.
Second by Coates.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Announcements. I do have 3 announcements, if I may. First 2, tomorrow is our annual Veterans Day celebration. We invite you all to come with the parade starting at 10 o'clock and activities after that. A little tribute, not a little, but a good tribute to our veterans. And then we will feed them and their spouses. It's always been a good day. We've, the other mayors and myself, about 4 years ago, were able to finagle the Veterans Day program to be in Washington City because the veterans were getting tired of being in a parade in St. George and Hurricane in Washington. So we were able to consolidate it to our Veterans Park. It's been a nice thing. And then after Thanksgiving, the Monday after Thanksgiving is our annual Christmas in Dixie. We'll probably continue to have that name. That may not be my decision, but that we'll have that name, Christmas in Dixie. And Ben, if you'd come up, Ben is our Recreation Director for Washington City, was awarded the Get Healthy Utah by the Utah League of Cities and Towns for working to support opportunities for healthy living for all our residents. I think that's important. I think you all recognize how important it is to be healthy and to stay healthy. So, Ben, let me present this to you if I may.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the Mayor and Council for providing such a great environment conducive to getting this award, and we look forward to continuing to work on improving the lives of our citizens. Thanks.
Thanks, Ben. I'm going to race you in about 2 weeks. You all right with that? Okay. All right, item 3, declaration of abstentions and conflict.
Mayor, I have a conflict with item 9A and 10B.
Thank you. So noted. Item 4, canvass, consideration to approve the canvassing of November 2, 2021. Tara?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We actually have Melanie Applenat from the Washington County Clerk's Office here to review the 2021 municipal election results with us.
Thank you, Melanie.
I'm short. All right. It's been a long time since I've been out to Washington City. It's good to see all you guys again. It's been a while. Of course, we are here to present the election results for the 2021 municipal general election. And we want to say thank you for allowing the county to be your election vendor, because that's what we are. This is your election, and we were glad to be a part of it. It turned out to be, I think, a very good election. So hopefully you guys have got at least a couple of documents in front of you. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start with the actual election results. And just for I guess just for information, Washington City now has 16,575 registered voters. So you continue to grow. We added 45 just since the primary. So of course, you guys are growing out here. All right, without further ado, for the Washington City mayor race, Kenneth Nielsen had 2,298 votes, and Cress Daly had 4,607 votes. So, of course, one being elected, Cress will be the new mayor, so congratulations. Now for Washington City Council, of course, the top 2 vote getters will, of course, become council members. Roger M. Bundy had 2,433 votes. Kimberly Casperson had 3,218 votes. Brent Henderson had 3,949 votes. And Marissa Thane had 3,140 votes. So now we get to see if my dyslexia kicks in here. So it looks like Brent Henderson and Kimberly Casperson are the 2 highest vote getters. Now, interestingly enough, I should say on your canvas reports that we have, this is where the county gets to account for every single ballot that we have in our possession. And so the upper section, we actually counted for Washington City 3 times. Of course, on election night, of course, that's how the unofficial results came out on election night. And then we counted again the next day on the 3rd. Susan Lewis, our new clerk auditor, liked to crack that whip, and we got after it, of course, the next day. And we added another 968 votes the very next day for you, which I thought was pretty awesome. I'm glad that we did that for you. Ended up helping out in the long run. And then, of course, we were able to add even a few more votes after that. There are a couple of deadlines, of course, that we have to adhere to by law, that we have to count a ballot if it's postmarked November 1st or before. And we did have a few of those come in. And then we also have a group of ballots that are called cure ballots. So these are by mail ballots that have come into our office. Maybe there's no signature. Maybe the signature doesn't match what we have on file. Well, by law, we've got 24 hours to reach out to those voters, and we call them, we email them, or we send them a letter. And they do have until the Monday before this meeting to be able to cure their situation. Now, unfortunately, we had lots that did, but we also had lots that didn't. So we'll get into that here. All right, so as a total for this election, we counted 6,939 votes here, and you have a 41.86% turnout, which is the first time you guys have been over 40%, so that's pretty good. Now, out of those 6,939 ballots, we have an additional 545 for Washington that we could not count. So if you come down here to the reasons why, there were 139 ballots that were returned as late, which means the postmark was November 2nd or later. And unfortunately, we had 305 ballots that were returned to our office as undeliverable. And what's nice about those ballots is we do a voter roll cleanup on those so they don't end up on your rolls again. Of course, those are people that have moved recently, okay? Then, of course, there were 101 ballots of residents here who needed to cure something on their ballot and they didn't return them to us. So unfortunately, we weren't able to count them because of some kind of deficiency. So there were 545 ballots at that point that we could not count. Now,
How is our city doing as compared to other cities on the blank ballots cast? Are we higher or lower than other cities
you
on
guys are
blank
about
ballots?
the same. Yeah, hardly any at all. I think there was about 4 total.
The report says we had 7 blank
Oh,
ones.
7. Sorry, dyslexic kicks in here, but not too many.
Was hoping we'd be lower than the other
Yeah,
cities.
well, we do have a lot of people who do contact our office and they do ask, what if I don't want to vote for this race? Or what if I don't want to vote for one candidate? Or if I just want to vote for one candidate and not two? Well, here in Utah, they can cast simply a blank ballot. That is their voice. They're saying, hey, can't make a decision here. I'm going to send my ballot back as blank. So that would be the case on that.
Which actually does keep them on the voter rolls.
It does. It does. Now, here in Utah, we don't remove people from the voter rolls unless they've missed 2 regular general elections. So that's 4 years. And, we do have new residents who have moved in here from other states, and they're compelled by what happened in their other states that they feel like they have to send a ballot back, or we're going to just automatically remove them from the rolls, which of course we don't. So, is it because they're new, they didn't know anybody, or if it was something else? But
So of the 305 that were undeliverable, will the county go to work now and try to determine whether or not those were just numbers that were maybe transposed, or try
Yeah.
to identify whether those were, okay.
We do. Yeah, we go through a complete review of all of these. Most of them do have either, they come back as undeliverable and we literally make them inactive, or sometimes there's a forwarding address. And so we also make them also inactive and reach out to them where they're at. So of course, voters at that point have to interact with us in the future to be able to receive a ballot in the mail.
So undeliverable means
Undeliverable.
you got it back, never had been opened,
Never
no
been
attempt to
opened.
vote. You don't even think it made it into the hands of who it was supposed to reach.
No, actually, the post office did what they were supposed to do. We pay first-class postage to have these ballots returned back to us because we want, of course, ballots can never be forwarded. So the post office did what they were supposed to do.
Those aren't votes that may have been cast, but just incorrectly, weren't properly certified. Those were not votes.
Those were not votes.
But they could have been votes had they made it to their destination.
Yeah. Now, yes, exactly. So what's nice about the undeliverables is they are literally voter roll cleanup for us. So we do utilize them that way as well. Just another little piece of information. You did have 8 people who voted provisional ballot on election day, which is nice. You guys did allow people to do same-day registration, which is fantastic. However, there was one person who could not prove their identity, so we were unable to count that one ballot. And speaking of in-person voting, you did have 83 Washington residents take advantage of that in-person voting on election day. So not a huge percentage, but it was still available. Thank goodness that you guys did allow them that opportunity to vote in person.
If someone wanted to vote in this next election or move here, what would be the first step for them to take to be able to ensure that they get a ballot for the next election?
Well, they need to make sure they're registered to vote first. There's a little bit of misconception. I think people, especially people who move here from other states, where they assume that they go into the driver's license division and we just automatically register people. And that's not necessarily the case. They do have to physically check the box to do so. And another good quick way for them to do that is to visit vote.utah.gov and actually see if they're a registered voter. And it will tell them if they're active or inactive, or if they don't show up at all, then they do need to update their voter registration, and they can do that either online at that vote.utah.gov or contact the clerk's office.
Or they could go to the city recorder or county
City recorder, yeah. Yeah, Tara will have some voter registrations here as well.
So some counties will pay the return postage for the ballots. I noticed that Washington County or Washington City chose not to do that. What happens to a ballot that does not have postage affixed?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if I want to answer that. No, the Washington County does have a postage due account. So we already have monies in that account for the Postal Service where they will send those ballots to us and the county pays for the postage.
So is that
So-
chosen on a city by city level, or would the county make that choice for each municipality?
Well, right now, the county does not charge, does not affix postage. Now, for your election, we would have been out a whole lot for postage. You know, with only a 40% return, we would be paying for a lot of excess postage that direction. But we also have the drop boxes, which, by the way, that is the most liked way for people to return their ballots. The drop box here at the library was constantly full, which is amazing. Of course, no postage is required that direction too.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Council, I'll just chime in here. Several months ago, you reviewed and approved an election services agreement, and what you're seeing is the result of that. The county's invested in the technology and the machines and the staffing to be able to count and control and produce election results. And in the state of Utah, it's done at a level of security that makes most other states just kind of tremble. The process and the technology used is very secure, and it gives our elections a lot of integrity. And I just would commend Washington County, and we appreciate them as an election partner.
Thank you. We appreciate you guys as well.
Thank you, Melanie. Appreciate it. Okay, move on. Item 5, consent agenda.
Do we need, we need a motion to.
Oh, let's
take.
have a motion.
I make the motion that we approve the canvassing of the November 2nd, 2021 municipal elections as presented.
Councilman Ward, I second that.
Roll call vote.
Bundy, aye.
Coates, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Ward, aye.
Staley, aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. That's approved. Item 5, consent agenda. Our board audit report, consider to approve the board audit report for October, to approve minutes from the council meeting of 10/27/21 and final plats. Consideration to approve a final plat for Mustang Valley Phase 2 located at approximately 3895 South Mustang Valley Drive. Applicant Gold Line Homes LLC. Item 2, consideration to approve a final plat for Heritage Place Phase 1 located northeast of Heritage Fields Drive, 2000 South. Applicant Nyson Field LLC. Item 3, consideration to approve a final plat for Heritage Place Phase 2 located northeast of Heritage Fields Drive and 2000 South. Again, applicant Nyson Field LLC. Item 4, consideration to approve a final plat for Sunrise Valley Industrial Phase 1 located at approximately 95 South Country Way. Applicant Midden LLC, Plum Holdings SG LLC. Item 5, consideration to approve a final plat for Commerce Hospitality Center located at 954 North Commerce Boulevard. Applicant Dean Terry Investments LC. Item 6, consideration to approve a final plat for Oak Grove located at approximately 2200 South, 240 West. Applicant Kepler 5 LLC. Any questions or comments on the consent agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Bundy makes a motion to approve.
Second by Coates.
I have a motion and a second. We'll go roll call vote.
Staley, aye.
Ward, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Coates, aye.
Bundy, aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. That's approved. Item 6, preliminary plat. Consideration to approve a preliminary plat for Brio Phase 6B located at approximately Camino Bordet and Rialto Parkway. Applicant Cole West Homes.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. The applicant is requesting approval of a preliminary plat for the Brio Phase 6 subdivision located at approximately Camino Bordet and Rialto Parkway. This particular subdivision is proposing 31 lots on an area covering 5.752 acres. The zoning designation at this location is Zone Plan Community Development. The surrounding zoning is PCD to the north, east, south, and west. The proposed subdivision conforms to the approved zoning. The request meets the subdivision requirements and other city ordinances as it relates to this location. Staff has reviewed the request and recommends approval with conditions of the preliminary plat as outlined. The Planning Commission reviewed this request on October 20th, 2021, and unanimously recommended approval of the preliminary plat for the Brio Phase 6B subdivision based on the following findings and subject to the following conditions as seen in your report. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
No questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'll make a motion. We approve the preliminary plat for Brio Phase 6B, located approximately Camino Bordet and Rialto Parkway.
Bundy, second.
I have a motion and a second. Again, roll call vote.
Bundy,
Coates, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Ward, aye.
Staley, aye.
Item 7, thank you, that's approved. Item 7, donations. Public hearing for consideration to approve a donation to the Senior Companion and Foster Grandparent Program with the 5 County Association of Government. Joanne Lyman. Anybody representing 5 County Association of Governments? Anybody want to associate with the 5 county governments?
Mayor, maybe we should just postpone this one, or do you want to table it to next week? I don't know, is anyone here on the council?
I was thinking to make a motion to table for 2 weeks to see if that works.
Well, if that's, I'll make a motion that we table the donations for the discussion on the donations for the Senior Campaign for Foster Grandparents Program for 2 weeks.
And that'd be 7A and 7B.
Yeah.
Oh, 7A and 7B. Yeah.
Bundy,
Staley,
second.
I'll take a second from Councilman Staley.
Staley, aye.
Ward, aye. And will staff be reaching out to, yeah.
Ivy, aye.
Coates, aye.
Bundy, aye.
Thank you. We will table that one. Item C, public hearing for consideration to approve donations of, surplus fire equipment to the fire stations in need. Chief Matt Evans? You online, Chief? There you go.
I am. Thanks so much for a little bit of your time. Before we even jump down this, we want to say thanks. We wouldn't be having this conversation about being able to donate equipment if we didn't have the support we have from our mayor and council, and we appreciate that. Really, I guess the issue is to get rid of any city property. Anything of value needs to go through a process. We have kind of a challenge with what we surplus. We really aren't getting rid of anything that has value, so to speak. But when it comes down to it, some of it does. So the examples, the easy examples anyway, is you look at our SCBA bottles. So the bottles that we wear in a backpack with the compressed air, those have a shelf life of 15 years. After 15 years, they won't hydrostatically test them anymore, and they're really no good to us as far as staying compliant. We have found so those bottles contain quite a bit of aluminum. We found that we can get about $3 out of what's probably about 20 pounds of aluminum, because it's a mixed product, from a recycler. So technically, they have value. What we would really like to do with that kind of equipment is to be able to give it to some departments that would be happy to put it to use. These are places that aren't as fortunate as we are, to be honest, and they will take anything they can get. And so we would, rather than going down that road with some of the surplus equipment and getting a few dollars, donate it to another fire department, another government agency. A good share of those are within our county, of course, and are interested in really everything that we have with regards to the surplus stuff that we would be getting rid of.
Chief, do we have a list? I didn't see a list in the packet.
So really, we're talking about kind of a principle. There is a list. We were looking towards, so I guess there would be two ways to do that. One would be to bring you back a list every time we surplus some equipment. The other would be more of a principle, being able to donate equipment as it comes surplus. The equipment that we currently have is some expired turnouts. So our turnouts are, by the standard, supposed to be replaced every 10 years. We'll usually use them for about 15 to 18 years. Once they go out of compliance, we'll use them for training. A lot of the training stuff we do tends to beat them up pretty good. So we'll keep a hold of them for a while. The SCBA bottles we talked about a couple of years ago, we replaced the complete systems. We had really what amounted to about 7 different kinds of SCBAs, and we were able to replace all those. When we can, like with those, the ones that were newer, that the manufacturer would give us a trade-in for, we traded in. The rest of them, they weren't interested in. But like I said, there are some departments around us that would be interested in them. So we can absolutely provide you with a list each time if that's the direction you'd like to go, so that you can see exactly what is and what isn't.
So Chief Evans asked me about this, and I thought it sounded like something that our council would be very excited about. I wouldn't be presumptuous that way, but just knowing our council, our actual policy doesn't allow for donation to another government entity. So we were really looking for more of a blanket statement that if the fire department has something that they would like to
ongoing with no expiration.
Yeah, I mean, you could set an expiration, we could come back, but I think at some point we might want to look at our surplus policy and decide to add that in as a policy matter. But I think at this point it's, I'd support it. I think it's a really good way to help other departments, and like you said, that need that equipment that maybe we don't need anymore.
So Chief, a lot of these items are expired by date. Is it still well within regulation that other fire departments could use them?
Technically, it's not as far as it goes. That's where some of it is almost better to donate it in this fashion. It's going to another government agency, where some of it would be expired, technically not serviceable. At the end of the day, it's better. In some cases, it would actually be something that they don't have at all. So we do have a number of departments in the state that don't have any of this type of equipment that would take anything that they can get, whether it is technically expired and really by the standards not usable. For them, it's still better than nothing that they currently have.
So any burden would be on the user, not the donor, then in that case.
Yeah, and we felt like that was actually probably better in this case, as it was going to another government agency that fully understood that. Whereas if we just put it up on an auction site and it sells, it could go to some a private entity that may or may not, and what kind of disclosures need to happen and all those kind of things.
So are we looking at a top dollar amount of the value before it has to come back to council? Because I would hate to have an open, like anything can go without looking at it. I mean, I understand what we're talking about here is just little dollars that are not usable to us anymore, but
I think it'd be appropriate to set a value if you want to do that. Certainly if we had a fire truck or fire engine or something like that.
I don't want you donating our new fire truck, Chief, just so you know.
I think it'd be totally appropriate.
Not going to happen.
That's what you want to do.
I'm just putting it out there so it's on the record that I don't want that donated. So.
And council, maybe one more thing to add. We don't have any policy or law that says that you can't donate to other departments. It's just isn't stated. It's not addressed one way or the other. And so we're not asking you to take an action that would be in violation of anything explicitly stated. This is just an area that wasn't yet stated, and we thought that you might appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, I do. And if we can have Chief present a dollar value of what he thinks that max should be, because I don't know where to rate that.
Well, I think what we're saying right now is that we have some items that we want to dispose of, and I think Chief has mentioned those, but we're kind of looking at some stuff coming up in the future.
But we're looking to make an approval of donating surplus fire equipment and fire needs perpetually. That's what they're asking us
Right.
to do on the motion. So that's why I'm asking if we're going to set a dollar limit.
So
of what those
technically,
could
we're
be
in the
to-
public hearing still, but
Well, I understand that. I'm just asking the question. So I guess we can go into public hearing and then we can discuss that if you would like.
Any additional questions for the chief? We can't take those turnouts and donate it for Halloween costumes or anything like that. Wow, you didn't have anything to say? Speechless? All right, this is a public hearing. Any of you that would be interested in commenting about this, come on up. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved, Mayor.
Thank you.
Second by Coates. Staley, aye.
Ward, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Coates, aye.
Bundy, aye.
Thank you, gentlemen. Tara, oh, wait a minute. Did you have any from the general public at large that's not here, Tara?
We did not have any public
All
comment.
right. Thank you. Sorry about that. Item D, consideration to approve donating surplus fire equipment to fire stations in need.
So I'd ask Chief, is there a dollar amount or the manager that you think is reasonable? So we can include that in our motion.
Well, reasonable, subjective, and I think even the amount is, the value is somewhat subjective, but I would say $500, $1,000 of real value, something like that.
Okay, so with that, I concur with that, so I'll make a motion that we approve donating supplies for fire equipment and fire station in need as the fire chief recommends to donating those to other entities up to is it maximum of $1,000? $2,000 is what, I'll say $2,000 for Councilman Bundy.
Motion seconded by Bundy.
I do have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Bundy, aye.
Coates, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Ward, aye.
Staley, aye.
Thank you. Item 8, public hearings and related ordinances. Public hearing for consideration to approve zone change request E-21-24 to change from open space OS to residential agricultural 1/2 minimum acre RA 1/2 located approximately 2150 East Washington Dam Road, applicant Desert Sands LLC.
Thank you, Mayor. As stated, better get the right report. Applicants requesting approval to change the zoning of approximately 6.0 acres. The requested change is from the current zoning of open space to the proposed residential agricultural 1/2 acre minimum RA 1/2 zoning designation. The RA 1/2 request is for the purpose of developing the 2 parcels into a future residential subdivision. This particular location has a general plan use designation of estate residential, which allows for the R130, the RA 1/2, the RA1, and the RA2 zoning districts. The surrounding zoning to this parcel is open space to the north, residential agricultural 2 acre to the east, a residential, single-family residential 30,000 square foot lot, and the residential agricultural 1 acre to the south, and then the RA1 and RA5 zoning to the west. Staff has no concerns with the proposed zone changes outlined since it falls within the general plan. The Planning Commission reviewed the request at a public hearing at their October 20th, 2021 meeting. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of Z-21-24 for the zone change request from open space to residential agricultural 1/2 acre minimum. And that was on to you, the City Council, and based on the findings in your report. And I'll be glad to answer any questions the council has before your public hearing.
Drew, can you show me that spot? Just from the map there.
Councilman, I knew you were going to ask, and
Yeah.
I got it ready for you. I tried to zoom out because it's a long, narrow piece, so I highlighted the blue, and of course, it's the piece next to it. So that's kind of where it is, and I can move around just so, because if I zoom out higher, I'm going to lose these boxes. That's just because of the way the program on the computer works. So recently, right over in this area where you see my arrow was where that You did that bonus density RA1
Doug Dennett
project,
piece?
Doug Dennett's piece.
Right, okay.
And then, of course, you have your industrial areas over here, even farther west.
Is that what's showing on the plat map there, the cul-de-sac there? Is that the Doug Dennett piece?
Yes, as I go back, let me just pull that up so everybody knows. Yeah, so right on here, the cul-de-sac, and then this road is actually also stubbed in up farther in the subdivision right here.
Mm-hmm.
And then the cul-de-sac, and then it goes quite deep, especially past all those, there's a bank of easements that runs east and west through this property as it did the Dennett property, that has a multitude of water conservancy lines, R lines, proposed future trail, system, power, massive power easement through there.
Was staff encouraging us on that other piece to put some other provisions on that, or how did we handle those? Was there just a note on the plat that
There was a note that was left, and I don't know if you guys accepted the property at that time or thinking I think you might consider it at a future date, but it's common area open space right now on that other plat. That's this area right here, this where my little cursor's
But
floating.
that was for a future trail.
It's for future trail. We didn't make it any lot or part of any lot. We left that open through there for them to do it something at a future time, which would not be developed. It won't be able to be developed with all the power lines, the water lines, the sewer lines.
Main line for the whole county goes through there.
Yeah.
One of them.
Drew, is this the piece that the developer has talked about donating part of it or something to the city?
Yes, in the Dennett parcel that we're referencing to. It runs through this property right there as well, in this area roughly.
Mm-hmm.
Now, someone can put a road across it and develop, because he does go farther back. I'm going to just scroll this. You can see it goes back quite a bit beyond that. So you could put a road to get back there, but we probably wouldn't allow any platted lot. It would be a common area open space, and a road could go there to get to the, the north end of the property. And that would be in this area right through here.
Drew, can you clarify? I don't remember from the planning commission meeting, but there is that master plan trail and the easement that goes there. So you're saying that they could not have a lot to the north?
No, they could. I was just saying they could put a
But
road.
they would have to, the road would cross the trail essentially?
Yes. Yeah.
With this
You would have to, what they would do is just have a crossing right there is what you would do. You could do it in the form of a crosswalk, whatever the council and public works and the road transportation called out. But
Could they have multiple lots? And of course, you're probably looking at
if there's half
floodplain.
acre, yeah, well, and whatever else is back, they'll have to follow whatever other items, are back there, but.
So this being 90 feet wide, something like that, that would be your recommendation. Would you restate that, please? What your recommendation would be? Future lots or build out? I just want to make sure.
Well, I would just like it to where it could be considered if they can get there and have that, the legal access to meet all of our access management. I don't want anybody to think that it may not get developed. I think if everything was met, we would entertain something back there, but we have seen no proposal, of course, because it's at a zone change. We don't want to see proposals until the zoning gets changed on it. So but just because that is there, just want to make sure that everybody understands that if they could meet everything, we'd, probably be able to use that property back there as well.
So with this request being straight zoning, can we require that the trail easement be put on this at this time? Usually that's at a preliminary plat stage, but where this is kind of a unique.
Straight zoning, we're really not, if it's PUD, you can, but straight zoning, you're really not allowed to put conditions on straight zoning.
So if they put one house on here, you're not. I guess they could put one house.
Well, it's two parcels, in theory there. So
I'm just thinking, how do we make sure we get our trail easement across there? Because currently right now, we don't have a trail easement. We have an easement for every other utility out there, but we still don't have legal access to cross with a trail. Our master plan shows a trail in this location.
But if they were just going to do the one home, they wouldn't bother coming in and doing a half. They're going to subdivide.
Does that make sense?
Yep, it
Because right
does.
now, I wouldn't go to the city if that's my intent to do. I wouldn't need to, just to do one, if that kind of helps somewhat that thought process there, that I think they'll come in and ask for half-acre lots, and then in that preliminary plat, you put that condition on.
Any additional questions for Drew or staff or the applicant? Hearing none, this is a public hearing. Any of you out there that might be interested in this, come on up.
My name is Georgette Kent, and I live at 2191 East Washington Dam Road, and we're directly east of this piece of property. And sorry, we were not here for the first part of this, so I'm trying to catch up a little bit. I'm not quite sure what to say about this, because this whole bonus density credit thing is really hard to understand and wrap my head around, because you've granted that on the piece for Frontier subdivision. And that bonus density was given for a trail and a road that begins and ends on that piece of property. And the Planning Commission was astute enough to see that before we ever made any mention of that piece of property and our objection to that. But the City Council went ahead and approved that based on that bonus density. And I hear you talking about this trail. That trail, there is no trail. The trail is, for lack of a better description, a figment of imagination, because we're not going to give you access for a trail across our property. And it's my understanding that the people to the east of Dennett's subdivision are not going to give you access for a trail. So you have a trail that begins and ends on these two pieces of property, and the same with a road. And I do have a question. At the Planning Commission meeting, staff said that the bonus density would not come into play on property that was zoned half-acre. And that was why the Planning Commission approved the half-acre request for zoning on this when we had wanted larger lots, because our property is zoned R2. So I would like some feedback on that, if that's actually correct, because I've read the bonus density part of the subdivision, and there's description in there that goes down to 6,000 square foot lot for setbacks based on bonus density, and that a 6,000 square foot lot's the smallest lot that can be approved in bonus density. And so what assurance do we have that if this is a half-acre zoning, that somebody's not going to come in with a request for bonus density and reduce the lot sizes even further, because it does not say that it's not allowed on half-acre zoning?
I'll answer that real quick for you. They can't do bonus density on these two pieces. It's not allowed. You have to be the minimum RA1 to even qualify for bonus. So they have to put half-acre lots with half-acre setbacks on these two pieces.
Could you show me where it says that in your bonus density zoning ordinance?
Well, we're not even talking about bonus density tonight. I mean, I'd be more than glad to do that.
I understand that.
But if you go to my bonus density, it says right on, only for lots that are zoned RA1. It says right in the beginning of it.
Well, I'm looking at it, and it has setbacks where it talks about modified area for setbacks, where it down to a minimum of 6,000 square feet. And it says the absolute minimum lot size is 6,000 square feet. So
that's if you qualify to even apply for bonus density. You have to have RA1 to even qualify to go bonus density.
Well, I know they're asking for half-acre lots. We would prefer larger lots because we're RA2. We moved out there because we want animals. There's a legal definition for what RA 1 acre means.
And I believe this bonus density is just a, for lack of a better word, a backhanded or backdoor way to get a zone change, because it's not protecting the rural areas of the county, of the city, when you allow bonus density. Thank you.
Ma'am, if you'll, just a moment, if you'll look at paragraph B of the bonus density ordinance, 9-88-7, paragraph B, program participation, talks about the RA1 zone equivalent or RA1 zone requirement. And if it doesn't meet that, it would require a development agreement with the city. And so look at paragraph B of the bonus density language.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Neil Kent, and I live at 2191 East Washington Dam Road. You know, we've been in here, I think, for the last 20 plus years, and it's amazing how 5-10 years ago we were told this side of the river would never be anything but residential agriculture, because there had to be a place somewheres in the city of Washington or the county that horses and all the arenas that were built out in that area got to stay. And you know, it's pretty sad when you put next to us a bunch of people with no animals, and then we get the liability of that when their kids come on my place, and lo and behold, they climb in the corral and happen to get stepped on, or they happen to have a cow hook them, or my dog bites them. That means we get the liability of that. So if that's the case, and you're going to put them next to us, then you should have to make sure that they put a wall that their kids can't climb over, and that they can't come in my yard. And when the arena's being used, that they can't sit and complain because there's a little dust. And when the arena lights go on at night that have been there for 20 years, and they come in crying to you, because I'm going to tell them that's all right, I'll run them longer, because we've been there that long. And somewheres there ought to be a little bit of fair in this deal, because every major city, and I don't care if it's Phoenix or Salt Lake or Vegas, has horse areas, and you're literally doing away with ours. Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you for those comments. I'll entertain a motion to close this public hearing. Oh, wait a minute. Tara, was there any other comments online?
We did not have any comments on this item, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Now I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Seconded by Bundy.
Motion and a second, roll call vote.
Staley, aye.
Ward, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Goat's eye.
Bundy, aye.
Okay, move on to item B, consideration to approve an ordinance for zone change request Z-21-4 to change from open space OS to residential agricultural 1/2 minimum acre RA and a half located approximately 2150 East Washington Dam Road. Applicant, again, Desert Sands LLC.
I'll just share a little bit of feedback from the Planning Commission. With that assignment, I was there a few weeks ago. And, you know, the history on this, the parcel to the east that the Kents are talking about, you know, they're frustrated because this was primarily an RA1 zoning, and the applicant came in and asked for bonus density, which allowed, based on a number of factors, you know, of various lot sizes. And I expressed, you know, my concerns with that and voted accordingly when that piece came through. And because there are some smaller size lots that I didn't feel like were consistent with the horse property there. So I thought the Planning Commission did well. I thought the Planning Commission did well recently on this one, being in a tough spot. You know, the land use designation allows for some estate lots. It allows for for 1 acre, it allows for half acre, and those are all zoning that are consistent, with the general plan land use designation. The logic, and I think Mrs. Kent, the reason she's confused is because it is confusing. I think they'd like to see 1 acre lots or larger there, but the reason that the Planning Commission said recommended approval of the half acre lots is because, as has been explained, is with the half acre lots, the applicant cannot come in and apply for the bonus density program to get smaller lots, as did the prior applicant. So while I think the Planning Commission and maybe some of those around there would have liked to have seen the 1 acre lots, if 1 acre lots are approved, then who's to say that the applicant wouldn't then come in and apply for the bonus density program and have smaller lots? So I think the Planning Commission did the best they could with the half acre lots. It's not ideal. I don't like to hear that we're creeping in on people's right to farm, people's right to have livestock and the lifestyle that they've had for years and years. But it's also difficult because the property owner now is coming in with an application that's consistent with the general plan. If we try to encourage the applicant to go with 1 acre lots, then we open up another, potentially another set of problems. So anyway, those comments are just to, I guess, start the conversation, and unless somebody has a strong opinion and is ready to make a motion. But that's a little bit of the background and a little bit of my opinion on it.
So Drew, on half acre lots, can they have horses, or is it the 1 acre minimum?
Well, you can have them if you meet it would be tough on a half acre lot, but somebody could do it, and they probably could put one on there, because you have to be 100 feet away from any residence, including your own, with a corral area. So if your lot could do it and anybody else's, so you may end up with a horse that's in a 10 by 15 foot corral with a lean-to on it, and that's what sometimes people do, but they'll take them and ride them somewhere else. But technically, I've played it out a couple of times on different lots, and you can sometimes, depending on where homes are located. And that's the other thing. I used to try to push people at least to do the R130 in the estate, but you think about it, they don't have any animal rights on the R130. Half acre does. So you're kind of caught between that juggle of saying, well, I'd like them to have bigger lots, but if I go to the R130, they don't have any animal husbandry rights at all in that one, other than chickens, thanks to a previous councilman who got a chicken ordinance in years ago that he's not even snickering at me. But chickens can go on, if you have to have 10,000 square foot, but that's why the RA half at least allows you to do the other items, that there's a list of different animals you can have on RA, and it's based on half acre lot size. So that's where it does get tough, Councilman. When you were talking about it and listened to the Kents, is that I would always try to push people to R130 out in this area, which we do have a zone. Orville, can't remember his name up there. He's passed away since, but they did R130 to get bigger lots and stuff, and at least so they went with bigger ones. But that's the dilemma we're caught with. Half acre allows the rights of animals, but 30,000 square foot lots do not.
Thank you, Drew. Anybody want to make a motion?
Mayor, just a comment before a motion. I guess I just want to say that I totally sympathize with the Kents. Growing up here and being a part of an agriculture family myself, we've seen encroachments that progress brings. And I think it's my will and will of the council, as far as I know, is that those things are important to our heritage and to who we are as a community. And it's something that we need to remember and consider when we approve projects going forward. With what Councilman Staley said, if I understand correctly, is that this RA1 half actually protects the neighboring homeowners from bonus densities that could increase the amount of units that could be built on. And, I just want to make that statement that I understand.
if you don't want to take a stab at it, you can always table it.
Well, it just sounded like there were some council members who had some stronger opinions on this than maybe I did. I was thinking they were waiting for a motion on it.
I'll entertain a motion.
I'm not going to make a motion, but the challenge that you have is when the parcel to the east went with the bonus density, the area ended up with a mix in size of lots, right? You have as high as half acre, but then lower. Then the challenge is as you go to the east, you have the larger parcels, but yet this long skinny parcel presents some challenges to the property owner, which ideally with feathering, and Mayor, you understand this well, is we like to have a gradual transition between zones, right? That means we would have it would be nice to be able to have 1 acre lots here and then go to the 2 if you have half and less in the bonus density on the other side. But there are certainly some land constraints that make that difficult. RA1 says that's the minimum size. A lot of the constraints to the land are going to be basically by the meets and bounds of the property itself. I wouldn't mind hearing, I noticed the property owners here, I wouldn't mind hearing some of the applicants' thoughts as far as, intended uses, intended sizes, and that would help me if the applicant, Mayor, if you'd entertain the applicant to come forward.
And maybe they could also address some of the concerns that the Kents brought.
Hello, my name is Jason Newton. So the issue is, like Mr. Staley said, is that lot is only like 198 or something feet across. So we tried to put our 1 acre lots on it, and there's no way with the roads. With the city, you could do private lanes, but the city won't let you do that many lots on a private lane. It's just so dang long and skinny that it basically made it impossible. We have no problem with 1 acres but we couldn't figure out how to make it fit.
I'm going to ask you an unfair question so you don't have to answer it. Full disclosure.
Go ahead.
Now we're at the zone change stage, and so you don't have to tell us how you intend to plat. But would you like to share information about that?
Yes. So we have it just drawn up into 5 lots. It would just be adjoining. It would be Frontier Phase 2. You would just go in. We wouldn't, because we couldn't fit an access road and everything onto Washington Dam Road and get your road and get any, because the legal road requirements make it just pretty dang hard to use that piece. So the only way we could is with using Frontier Phase 1 as an egress and ingress. And we would have block walls, perimeters, we would make sure it was zoned, fenced completely so that the Kents wouldn't have any children or liability issues or anything like that.
So would you have a road that would go north-south along your parcel, or would it just come in east-west from Frontier 1 and then, access to the lots?
So it would come off, it would basically turn right at, it would turn down right there. They would get rid of that bubble on the bottom of Dennett's, and it would just cling to that side yard. And Dennett's willing to give up the setbacks that would cost him, because that would make those corner lots. But then it would tie that whole thing together. It would be clean, and then the accesses would be farther away from the Kents, ideally, which instead of coming into our piece, you'd come in the middle of his subdivision. It would eliminate any traffic next to their home and everything.
So you're
So
proposing
Sans,
taking-
sorry,
I was just gonna say, you're not proposing stubbing the roads through the site? You're like kind of a horseshoe loop back out?
Yes, it's only 5 lots in there. And then there may be a private drive to access across that easement, because that canal, trail, whatever it is, Mr. Sigmiller said it was definitely never going to be a road. We would just do a private drive or some kind of a way to cross that for the back parcel. But because we don't have the area, it makes the lots too little to even access that back piece.
So it's a total of 6 acres with the 2 parcels. Is that about right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we would only get
4 and 2.
And we're only looking at getting like 7 lots on it, so that's almost an acre per lot average. But by the time you take the streets out, that's, our final plan is only looking at 7 lots. So we're not going density.
I thought it was 5.
Well, 5, and then the flag piece in the back. There's a flag lot that's across the easement.
This piece I talked about earlier.
That's just on the northern end.
Yeah, we'd probably have to private drive up to that and cross that
You
easement.
put a private drive across the easement and put 2 other lots?
Yeah, when those would be an acre each. Those wouldn't be dense at all. It's basically 5 lots on 4 acres and 2 on 2 acres.
I'm not trying to get in the weeds, but I know the Kents don't have any intention of selling right now, but in 100 years, maybe something changes. We don't want to not put stub streets is typically what we've done, but it's not, we're talking zone right now, so I guess we don't need to dive into those weeds. That'd be one of my concerns. And we made the Dennett stub to them, same thing heading to the east.
Okay, so there is one stub street that where the circle is, where the roundabout, the cul-de-sac, that would stub straight through.
Okay.
But it just dead ends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Drew, what does the future roads look like through this area? Is there anything on there that's not showing that we need to be aware of?
Just Washington Dam Road's the only thing in this area that's just showed there. There's no north-south master plan roads anywhere.
Okay.
Till you get to Countryway.
Does that help?
Thank you.
Well, if no one's comfortable moving forward, I'll make a motion that we table zone change Z-21-24 until the following 2 weeks.
Staley, I'll second the motion.
Okay, do you have a motion and a second to table for 2 weeks? Roll call vote.
Bundy, aye.
Coates, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Ward, aye.
Staley, aye.
All right, that's tabled. Move on to item C. Public hearing for consideration to amend the Washington City Transportation Master Plan. Public Works Director. Or not.
Mayor, Council, this is a update of our transportation master plan and the impact fee study that goes along with that. And Horrocks Engineering did the work for us, and Aaron Baker and Emily Andrus have a presentation for you.
Well, I'm Aaron Baker with Horrocks Engineers, and Emily and I will be here to present to you our findings of the City Transportation Master Plan update. We have some purposes of. The purpose of this study was to.
Excuse me.
Oh yes, please.
Are we going through the whole presentation again? Oh, that's right. Never mind. I guess you folks wanted to hear it too, didn't you? All right. Sorry, just trying to hurry it along.
Mayor, I think most of the folks are here for a specific road.
Okay.
So I'm sure
Thank you,
that Mr.
Councilman.
Baker will address that as he goes through.
We could talk about the projects now instead, if you'd like to do that. Or,
No,
It
you
might be
you go
good to-
ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mayor.
Just go ahead.
okay. Some of the objectives that we needed to take care of in this study, and this is an update to an existing that you currently have, a May 2014 study. We by updating the socioeconomic data, updating the road master plan, and also developing transportation scenarios through our traffic model for 2025 and 2050, so future years, and then updating the capital facilities plan with short-term and long-term projects. And after determining what these projects are, we then updated the transportation impact fee. And I'd like to turn the time to Emily so she can just kind of go over some of the data that we had collected in order to do that.
Thank you.
My name is Emily Andrus with Horrocks Engineers, and I helped write and do a lot of the traffic modeling for the study. So I just would like to talk about what data we use to update this plan, and I'll be a little bit brief because we already had our work meeting on this, but I'm sure everyone here is very interested in data, right? And so we'll just be really brief about it. So Mike, thanks. If you'll go to the next slide. So we updated the city traffic counts. We started those in 2020, and we had to put them on hold during the pandemic when the traffic patterns really changed. And we started those back up in fall of 2020. So we kind of ended them March, April, and then came back and started them again in the fall. We used our land use plan and our road master plan and the population and employment estimates from the MPO and from the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget, and also from the census data. We can go ahead and skip this slide. These are just population estimates. We also used crash data for this area for Washington City to determine what areas needed some help, maybe with safety. And then in addition to safety, we looked at the UDOT bridge inspection reports for all the bridges in Washington City, and took all of those things into account when we were planning for projects in Washington City. Go ahead and skip that slide, Mike, thanks. These are our traffic analysis zones. We use these zones to analyze traffic. So we apply household densities and employment densities, and then the traffic in the model travels between those based on how many people are planned in each zone. And the next few slides show the household density and how it changes over the next 20, 25, 30 years. We can go ahead, yeah, thanks, Mike. We updated this road master plan, and we actually just got the most updated version just a couple hours ago from Dale Simper, who's the GIS guy at Washington City. And so we'll make sure that you get that updated map and an updated draft of this master plan.
Is it possible to zoom in on that a little bit? If not, that's okay.
Do you have a copy that's not in the slide deck?
Can you access that, Drew, from your machine?
Yeah, that's it. So just so that you are aware, the two changes that Dale made that he just sent us is the connector between the Walmart and the Home Depot, where it it is on there, actually on that one. And then Majestic Drive brought back that stub just a little bit. So that one is looking good. Was there anything in particular that you had a question about, Councilman Staley?
Those were the two issues that I wanted to make sure were updated in the Majestic Drive, and then the push through over towards Costco behind our Walmart.
Yeah, I know those are hot topics right now.
Yeah, thank you.
I think Councilman Staley, you wanted that to be zoomed in for the folks that are present in the room, correct?
Absolutely, yes. So maybe I'll just speak to that just a little bit. So Majestic Fields Drive, it's a 60-foot collector on the 2014 plan, had shown coming down and tying into 3650 South. Right. And on this updated plan, that ends at a private property that has no intention of wanting or having a road going through their property. And so as you look at that map, and Drew, if you can pull that back up, the access into future development on the northeast side of 3650 as it parallels the Southern Parkway SR7 is going to access off a 66-foot collector that comes off near that interchange with looks like with a exact location to be determined, but it's in a placeholder. If you can screen share again, Drew, that where the blue is.
Right, so Majestic is that orange one that stubs off kind of right in the middle of there. Yeah, that one.
Yes. So my question is, we've terminated the smaller road into the 66 is what we've done?
No, the 60-foot collector terminates into I believe, I could be wrong, I believe it's an 8-acre minor subdivision where there's a property there.
Yeah, I guess my question is, we're talking about the blue line, which is a 66-foot collector, and it looks like it goes to nowhere.
Well, I'll let Mike speak to future development there.
So the 66 that goes out, that's some area that's next to the Southern Parkway that's developable area. So that's what that road goes into, is to try to get that area so they have the access down to 3650. The road coming up Majestic comes up as a 66, goes to a 60. We had them originally, that road connected back down to 3650. Talking with some of the residents there, and we actually had them model this. And I think there's 5 roads that come out of those developments down to 3650. And so on the model, we didn't need that road tying through and going through the middle of their property.
No, makes sense. Thanks for the explanation. It just seems like a big road going to nowhere.
Yeah, there's a fair amount of property out there that's still developable, that's more flat area there. And then also in that Majestic area, that's all hillside, not going to develop up in there.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Mike.
So just for clarification, and we received quite a bit of public comment on this, that adjustment has been made, the public comment that we received, and I imagine a fair number of the residents that are here tonight, that adjustment's been made, and as far as you know, that road that they were concerned about that would go through is not planning to go through. Okay.
Right, so that one ends, and then that blue line that goes up kind of to the northeast, that will just be a connector for any development that happens up in that corridor. So if we could go back to that presentation, Mike, sorry to make you hopscotch a little bit. Great, thank you. I thought that I was done, but I didn't want to just take off if I wasn't. But I'll turn the time over now to Aaron Baker, who will talk about the projects that we found in Washington City that we sorted into a short-term plan and a long-term plan. So I'll turn that time to Aaron now.
So with those inputs that Emily talked about, we ran the model and we had recommendations for a short term, and we have some a list of projects that have been completed from the last time that this was updated in 2014. And here's a list of several of them, including Washington Parkway, which is phase 1 has been completed, and Merrill Road. A couple pretty highly visible roads in your community. You can go ahead and these are some examples of projects, of new projects that are in the short-term plan. 3650 South, the connection from St. George over to the Southern Parkway, including the interchange with Southern Parkway. A pretty critical connection that Washington really needs to look seriously at. There's a lot of growth in that area, a lot of new vehicles that we'll be planning for. Today, 3650 sees about 5,000 to 6,000 cars a day, and I think in about 5 to 10 years we'll be seeing about 25,000 cars a day. So there's a tremendous amount of growth on 3650. Another is sorry about that, Mike. The Milepost 11 interchange, that is also on the list of one that it needs to be looked at and addressed, and that will be looked at in addition to adding lanes on I-15 between Mileposts 10 and 13. And there's 32 projects in a short-term plan that we have that we've listed, and we've mapped those here, so people have an idea. They're just kind of all over the city and very heavily developing areas. So that's what makes them higher priorities that we'll be doing within the next 6 years, and that's what our plan is in this study. And these are examples of projects in the long-term plan. A couple of them that I just wanted to mention. One was Merritt Way. That's frontage road along I-15 on the south side along I-15, where there's a tremendous amount of commercial development coming into that area. So that one is it's kind of in the distance a little bit, but not very far away. Another is Purgatory Road, one you've been planning for many years, but that one this time will come very soon. But it'll be in the long-term plan, a little bit further than 5 years away. And these are the long-term plans that we have in the study, so you can identify where they're at and which plans are short-term and long-term according to their color. And these are the plans that are the projects listed. The 1 to 5 year improvements are on the top of the table, and the 6 to 20 year improvements are on the bottom. And with these, we've estimated each of these projects in today's dollars, and looking to see what kind of percentage the impact fee would participate in these projects, just based on the growth that is occurring in the community and how capacity is needed on these roads. So the total that we calculated along with staff and looking at this closely is about $17.7 million in the next 6 years would be allocated to impact fees and with new developments and new permits paying for those. So with this list of projects, we then can look at the impact fee study. Now that we have that fee eligible amount of the $17 million, we would then look to the future to see historically how the permits, how building permits would help to pay this $17 million in the future. So we looked at the number of houses just based on the history of the permits as they're built, and then looking at commercial uses and assigning equivalent single-family homes for each commercial building, and then looking to see how many equivalent single-family permits that we would have in the future. And just as an example of what a single-family equivalent is to those that are curious as to how we came about this, is if you had a community that all you built were single-family homes, it would be simple to just assign a portion of that $17 million to the number of homes that are built. But in development in a city like this, there's a lot of commercial building as well. So the example that we have here is how many trips are generated by a 5,000 square foot medical building, for instance. How many equivalent houses does that medical building equate to? And in this case, it's 18 single-family homes. So we look at all we project the number of commercial buildings that will be coming in, and assign equivalent trips to the commercial to a single-family home. And looking just at single-family home equivalents for the next 6 years, because 6 years is the only time you can allocate traffic impact fees. You can't go beyond that. It's projected that the city will experience about 6,038 single-family equivalents of growth in the next 6 years. So those 6,038 single-family equivalents are then divided into the $17 million to come up with an impact fee. We can probably skip this part. And if we were to do that, then the recommended fee per single-family home would be $2,941. And the trend of that in the past since 2007, you can kind of see how they've changed as the years have gone on, and how much the city has assessed for single-family homes per permit. And it does represent a decrease of 7% of what currently is being assessed right now.
You're okay.
Okay.
Any questions from the council?
And I just wanted to, first of all, thank you for all your work on this. It's not often that the engineers come back with a study and recommend a tax decrease or an impacts fee decrease, but it's the case here. Obviously, the theory behind the impact fee is that new growth should pay for the cost of
Right.
not only the roads, but a number of other services. The one question I had is just in regards to, what if the growth slows down? What if we pump the brakes a little? Does it just mean we don't build the roads to the extent that the plan shows?
Yeah, exactly. You are pumping the brakes. You're determining that the growth isn't sustaining the need to build the roads, so you don't build the roads because you're not collecting the fees.
And so
anyway.
that's just a matter of council and staff determining the priorities and adjusting accordingly. So,
Correct.
but this is a guide, and you feel like this recommendation of a lower street impact fee makes sense based on the modeling, based on the data.
Yes.
And that's really why you don't have these ranked in priority, right? Because we're waiting to see what development needs to come in and then prioritize those, but we still have the plan to move forward on the things that we have vision for right now.
Yes, I'd say that's correct.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Wonderful study. Appreciate it. Very informative. Okay, it's a public hearing. The moment you've all been waiting for.
I'm Herman Pearson. I live at the very end of Majestic Drive, and the wife and I have been there for 22 years. And a large percentage of these people here live on Majestic Drive. And when we realized that the plan showed that Majestic Drive is going to come through, then we all got together and said, hey, it's going to ruin our neighborhood. So the majority of our wives got together and decided to, they didn't want this to happen. And because of the children, the traffic, etc. And one of our neighbors, Kurtz, and I went to talk to Mike Shaw and one wife in particular, and I'll name these wives off so you guys will know them, who started this. My wife, Sandra Pearson, Stephanie Sigurd, Sherry Staley, Mary Rogers, Kathy Kurtz, Carissa Congro, I think that's how you pronounce it, and Lisa Williams. And they got all of us guys together and started this, and we asked Crest to come out and let us air our concerns, and he did. He listened to all of us, all the ladies, and our complaints and what have you. And I'd like to personally thank you. And I thank the rest of the individuals from Majestic Drivewood as well. And I'd also like to give some accolades to Mike Shaw. This man knows his job. He explained a lot of particulars to most of us that have no idea what you guys are doing. And he explained the plan, the traffic plan and what have you to Chris and I. And we understood what and the wife, and we understood what he was explaining. And I'd like to thank you very much, Mike, Councilman Staley, for coming out and hearing our complaints. And obviously it worked. And I highly recommend, as I'm sure the majority of us here do, also that you go ahead and approve this new plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a procedural question. Do we have a policy to deal with compliments?
Yeah, it's a free round of golf with the mayor.
Yes.
Gentlemen, I'm Mike Courget. I live on Majestic, 935 Majestic. I too want to thank Councilman Staley for providing some time for us to have an open discussion, a pleasant discussion, both positive and negative information. And I would encourage each of you, as you have time, to when things like this are coming up, to visit the communities that are being impacted. The work that was done with the change in the transportation plan, I think we all are humbled with the amount of time and the amount of work that went into it. I would ask that as we move forward as a community, as the 11 years that we've been on Majestic, the love that we have for one another. I don't think there's a single person in Washington City that wants to do anything that would hurt another, be it property or anything like that. But as we continue to grow and the challenges that you face with what we've tabled tonight, with the growth in properties and changing of the zoning, I would encourage you to look not just at what's being presented. Councilman Staley, a couple of months ago, discussed an issue with this very road that is no longer in the plan because of an issue. And at the time, he and I had a discussion. It was going to impact his property that he has there. But it opened up a thought for all of us moving forward, that as we're approving zoning changes and plots, we need to look at how those roads fit into the master plan. Are these roads going to give a proper connection to a major artery? Is it going to impact children as a 23-year vet, my concern always, whenever I hear or see anything being passed at the city and county level, is number one, where's the water coming from? I spent a little bit of time in the desert. Water is a valuable resource, and we waste too much of it. And two, are our children being protected? I appreciate the fact that we have a light coming in at the corner of Majestic and Washington Fields. Unfortunately, I think that light should have been there prior to the school being built. We have too many close calls. Many of us will drive into the intersection and stop so that children can cross, because too many people just don't pay attention. But again, I want to thank you for all the work that you do and the service that you provide for all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service. Be sure and attend Veterans Day tomorrow.
Well, I was going to echo that as well, because that is actually one of the joys of being on council, is working with citizens, regardless of what their concerns or complaints might be. And it's been my experience that when good citizens are willing to kind of get together and actually voice their concerns and bring them forward, and especially at the absolutely appropriate time, which is right with when these things seem boring and there is some data that you kind of have to plow through, but this is exactly the right time to be doing it, to be thinking ahead. These are the best tools we have. I applaud you and thank you for your being involved and communicating with your neighbors, talking. Thank you.
So Mayor, with the advice of our great city resident.
We're not done with the public.
I'm sorry.
No.
I just got so carried away with
know.
his speech that I
He's
lost
excited.
my,
He's
I lost my
excited.
entire. Okay.
Anybody else from the audience? Tara, anybody via email?
Mayor, I'll speak on those. So the city did receive 6 written comments from the public. I've reviewed them here. I've confirmed that they're received from both husbands and wives in the area of Majestic.
They're here tonight.
Husbands, not just husband, but they do address specifically either the Pearson property or Majestic Drive, and so I don't believe they need to be read into the record tonight, but they will be included in the written record of the meeting just for documentation.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Okay, now I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved, Mayor.
Roll call vote.
Yes,
Second by Bundy.
Roll call vote.
Bundy, aye.
Goats aye.
Ivy.
Ward aye.
Staley, aye.
All right, thank you. Take it away, Councilman Ivy.
I was so eager.
Wait a minute. Item D, let me make it official. Item D, consideration to approve an ordinance amending the Washington City Transportation Master Plan.
A motion to approve an ordinance amending the Washington City Transportation Master Plan.
Councilman Ivy, can you also add and adjusting the transportation impact fee?
And the adjustment to the Transportation Master Plan amount in the amount of $2,941.
Okay. Nobody wants to second it?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote.
Staley, aye.
Ward aye.
Ivy, aye.
Goats aye.
Bundy, aye.
Thank you. That's approved. Item E.
Mayor, if I may just quickly, Mayor, just talk to the citizens. So the action tonight is not a perennial guarantee that a road won't go somewhere. Those decisions can be made and future circumstances might justify them, but it does remove it from the city's plan at this point, which is a fairly big step. And future circumstances and development will probably create issues that the council in the future has to confront. But we appreciate you for your advocacy and wish you the best out there.
Thank you. Item E, public hearing for consideration to amend Washington City Code Title 10, Chapter 3 plats. City Attorney.
I'm used to people walking out when I get up to speak. No worries. They didn't like my speech. They're all leaving. So this is a code amendment that was discussed in a prior work meeting. This is the solution that the council seemed to resolve around recommending. The solution was that to increase our efficiency of process as to final plats only, we would remove the planning commission as being a required step for consideration for a final plat. So I've given you both the proposed new language of the ordinance for review. That's what would go into effect if you were to pass it tonight. Also given you a highlighted section of the current ordinance. The highlighted sections are those sections that are changed by this amendment. Any questions?
Sorry, did you reference some language that was stricken?
It's highlighted in the
Oh, I know
current
the
ordinance.
highlighting is, he said, is the added stuff, and I can see
Highlighted is mostly converted to city council,
Okay.
but yes, section K was deleted entirely. Sections J and L were edited to change from planning commission to city council. Section K was a prior section that really just referred solely to the planning commission's action. Since we're proposing to remove them, section K was just deleted.
I think this is probably a pretty good compromise on this. Obviously we had several final plats from residential, industrial, commercial tonight, and we flew through those pretty quickly. I still like the idea of them coming back with that accountability factor, but I think it's okay to remove one step from that and planning commission. Although I will say that at the last planning commission meeting, there was a final plat, and they don't just approve those on a consent agenda, right? Every final plat is its own item, and so they kind of discuss it again. And it was interesting on one of the residential developments. They had the applicant come back up. They interacted with the applicant, and I thought there was a positive result in terms of what the developer agreed to do in terms of a road and some of the phasing. So if we remove the planning commission from this, then I think that puts a little more onto the council to be aware. Maybe the council needs to be the one out of the loop, and the planning commission, is the last step. But it was eye-opening to me to see that interaction, and Drew probably can remember the one that I'm thinking about. But just because of interaction on the final plat, one of the commissioners said, well, you're finishing this much of the road on this phase, why not just finish it here to the intersection? And the developer was happy to do that, which I felt like was a positive and something I hadn't really considered, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I think you highlight a fairly significant impact of this change if approved, which is council always has a staff recommendation and review that you get to rely on, but the planning commission is another board of citizens, and they are more focused in their agendas than the council. The council's agendas are all of the city's business, but theirs are land review applications, and by removing them, you won't have the reliance of knowing that the planning commission has reviewed and recommended this for approval. And I think what that does is that shifts some added responsibility to the council as to final plats.
Well, I know I look at every final plat, and so I don't mind if additional responsibility. I still think I think this was a good compromise as well, that we remove a step, because 99.9% of them we've got the preliminary plat.
Yeah, and
their vested rights are there, and so I think this is a good compromise, and we move forward with this, and try it. And if we don't like it, we can always work on changing it back if it doesn't work out the way we like.
I know that I discussed this proposal with a representative of the Builders Association at the Water Summit, and it was well received. I think the builders see that it's an effort to try and streamline and acknowledge that the time in the process is an important element to the people that have to use it.
And I appreciate our city being aware of those things to try to help streamline and take roadblocks out of the way and make things more efficient for our builders and citizens. I think that's just responsible good work.
Drew, you work with both of these bodies. Your thoughts with planning commission review versus council review? I mean, obviously with the council, it's on a consent agenda, so we're not, we're reading through those, and often we have a representative here, but we're not taking the time to just kind of revisit Does that happen more than I might think as far as something else comes up on final plat that can be addressed or is that a rarity?
No, it is a rarity, and those odd occurrences, usually I may talk about it or maybe try to, because we can always pull it off a consent agenda. There's nothing in the code that says I have to put it on consent agenda. It's just what the council's, generously done. I think if I ran into one that might have problems, I'm gonna say, well, we're gonna back that out and put it as a regular item. If there's something that I think needs to be brought.
So on this particular one, where the applicant, the developer was willing to extend more section of road, I mean, and that comes through is that just on the minutes, or is that now part of the conditions on the final plat approval?
Yeah,
When
it would
comes
be,
through to
they'd
us?
have to, to make it, of standing, it would have to be part of the motion.
So that then would in best practice require each of us to vet those final plats, right? And if necessary, even if it stays on a consent agenda, to have those conversations, even if it takes a little more time than just a.
Well, I think
Yeah,
if
what
you
I'd-
have a
what-
concern on one, we can always pull it out and discuss
You can,
it.
yeah, or ask questions in your
Or ask
consent
questions.
agenda.
And I think I'm kind of leaning towards that. I
Yeah.
think
No.
but in this particular case, and I understand a rarity, because again, like I said, it wasn't something I had thought about prior, but that was a surprising benefit to the review of the final plat.
Just
Yes.
just to chime in on the example you're using, my legal opinion is that we could not enforce that road extension against the developer because rights are vested at the preliminary phase. I think the developer said, hey, I'll accommodate the city's concern because I want to work with you and I want to maintain relationships, but I don't want the council to understand that something they add at final would be something that we would try and legally enforce.
And I was just going to, tag on to that I would just strongly recommend especially the thing you want to look at is the conditions. If you open it up, you see those standard 5, nothing really has been added or changed onto that. Sometimes Public Works will ask to have an extra condition on just because they're trying to work with the applicant, and get it done, but they'll just say, I'm fine with moving this forward, but I want this condition to say this, and they'll, it'll say either before it's officially recorded, they're going to want this done. So then it's part of the conditions on that approval. So then we can still move it forward for you folks to see it. You can approve it, but the condition says it will, say this particular stop signs, and I'm going to be really sarcastic, has to be blue, and it has to be changed before it's recorded. Just to throw you in an example, because because that'll never happen, but that would then have to be done before Public Works will put their signature on it. So those are the things why the conditions are kind of important to look at as well, just as a note for you in your reviewing and stuff. So
I think the net effect, Councilman Staley and others, is I think it really elevates your preliminary plat reviews, right? That's really where we need, if we're going to try and, step our game up in response to shortening the process. I think that's really where we'd want you to step it.
Well, and I think that also, and really the entire process, I mean, ideally, this council is taking staff review and and most of that preliminary plat review has already been vetted at the staff level, but I agree with you, Thad.
Yep. Any other questions?
Thank you. Any other questions? It's a public hearing. For those of you that are left, I'd like to come on up and say anything about Title 10. Okay, Tara, any comments from online?
There were no comments on this item, Mayor.
Then can I entertain a motion to close this public hearing?
So moved, Mayor.
Bundy, second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Bundy, aye.
Votes aye.
Ivy, aye.
Ward, aye.
Staley, aye.
Thank you. Item F, consideration to approve the ordinance amending Washington City Code Title 10, Chapter 3 plats.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve the ordinance amending Washington City Code Title 10, Chapter 3, final plats.
Mayor, I'll second that.
Thank you. Motion and second. Roll call vote.
Staley, aye.
Ward, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Votes aye.
Bundy, aye.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 9, continuation of consideration to approve an ordinance adopting zone change in PCD plan request E-21-23 to change from open space to planned community development located north of Washington Parkway. Applicant Clyde Green Springs LLC, GWC Capital LLC, and Brookco.
Mayor, I'm going to abstain for this and step down.
So noted, thank you.
So Mayor, anyone that was here at the meeting 2 weeks ago or listened to the broadcast heard me share a couple of concerns that I have with this project. I'm very pleased to report that I had an excellent conversation with Mr. Paisley at Sitla, where he identified some options for commercial development at exit 13 north on the north side. And I look forward to having those conversations and looking forward to seeing what we can do there. As I said, and as he agreed, it just is one of those things where the revenue that we would get from tax there is one thing, but it's just convenience to have that there. And so I'm very pleased to report that back to the council. And then the other concerns that I had were mainly in regards to the trailheads that lie within this project. Now, this is a unique project because this project will encompass trailheads, and so there's a responsibility on City Council to make sure that those remain accessible, usable by our citizens and by visitors. And so at this time, I'd like to go through, if you just give me a couple of minutes and kind of let me share what I envision with this, and with the effort to try to put some of this stuff out now so that the preliminary plat, they can be addressed maybe and discussed going forward from that. But the first is, appreciate you bringing up that map, Drew. You're a good mind reader. That's exactly the one we needed, so appreciate that. On the far east end where the Prospector Trail is, that's very near exit 13, that trailhead is completely opened, and it has, it's really not affected by this development at all. It's open the way it has been, and I assume that it will be that way going forward through the duration of this project. And then on the west end, the city park that is accessible right from a main road that comes in there through that yellow right into the city park. It's very accessible. It's easy to get in, easy to get out, and so that's very well planned. I think that's something that will be used and be valuable to have it there. Going up north to the Mill Creek Trail, where there's the loop up there in that corner where it's indicated by the blue circle. This is one of those pinch points that I just want to work with the developer, with council, and going forward, I think that we need to look at roads and parking and signage that ensures that all the visitors that would like to visit this trail can do so in a very comfortable, convenient manner. And then with the Dino Cliffs Trail loop over on the other side, same thing. It's kind of in the middle of the project there. You can see the blue circle there in the middle. Thanks, Drew. Then that again, roads and parking and signs. I don't know exactly until we kind of look at it and discuss it further before preliminary plat that what this looks like. But again, what my goal is to ensure that visitors and citizens can continue to use these emeralds in our city. Then the other item that I wanted to just bring attention to was the baby elephant arch. If you follow this project up from our Main Street and you look to the east side of where where Main Street comes through the project, basically everything to the east of that is in the estate areas that are behind gates and locked. Now, to be able to access baby elephant arch here, you're going to be going on community trails. You can see the public trails are the big orange dashes, and the smaller ones are the community trails. And you can see where the baby elephant arch is right there. Now, I don't know that that's a huge draw, but it's just something that I wanted to point out. Just as for me, I think that's something that as citizens in Washington and the area, we know about this, and we know that, you know, that it's a great draw for people that to attend to visit that.
Councilman, is
Then-
that the one that's just there on that cliff face?
Yeah,
It's not the
closer.
upper cliff face, because
It's
that's
lower.
actually in the reserve.
Yeah, if you look at it's below the cliffs. It's well below the cliffs. Can you show the cliffs there, Drew, where the cliffs is up, like where you see the dinosaur cliffs trailhead up in there, and then this is down. This is down from the cliffs. It's that square right.
There's just a little rock face up in there that angles down southeast.
It's what? It's a stretch that it's an elephant. Well, I don't know who named it, but, and then the last thing I'd mention is just, and so my concern with that is just accessibility, where it is behind in the state area where you can't drive to it. You're going to have to access a community trail to be able to get to that. And then the last thing that I really wanted to ask the developer or whoever's representing this application today is questions about the dinosaur tracks that reside in this development. They're not identified on any of the maps. Therefore, I don't know if they're even known to be there and what's being done to make them available so that people can visit them or to protect them. So those are just some big questions that I have. The dinosaur tracks are not, they're probably, a lot of locals know they're there. But my question is, Mayor, is if they could address just if, you know, what the plan is for the dinosaur tracks. The other thing else is on a map. I think that's easy to navigate.
So where are they?
The dinosaur tracks, if you can see the lower tank,
Mm-hmm.
if you come into that, barely into the orange, right, you come down in this area, it's in that wash right there.
Isn't that all sand?
In the bottom, it's sandstone.
Yeah, basically both sides of the ravine are red southern Utah sand. A lot of sage and kind of desert scrub that grows amongst them. And then in the bottom of the ravine, there's a location where the erosive waters flows have exposed a layer of sandstone bedrock, and the prints are just right in there. It's quite interesting, quite amazing that it's just bedrock exposed amongst all of that sand.
That's because there's one in the preserve that's the same way. It's down in the bottom of the wash, but that's not affected by the development here at all, right? That's actually
the preserve. They're not developing the preserve. Yeah, this is
north of
this
those
is
are
within
north of
settler
this.
lands.
That's directly. It's almost just straight over the hill or straight down the hill from the upper two tanks.
So yeah, it's in the, you know, the KN is the red, and then when you get further to the west, it blends into the Navajo. But the thing that's unique about this formation is that it's considered to be the water member that where most of the water from the Navajo aquifer comes through. So it's one of those areas that they're not great dinosaur tracks. They're fractured and they're not great, but they are there. And I just hope, you know, I just wanted to identify that they are there. I just haven't seen them on any maps or have them identified. So Mayor, that
You're
was
asking for like a signage or treatment of those, or?
well, I just first of all want to know if the developer knows that they're there, and if so, what the plan is for them. If there's any plan, or if there should be a plan, or
Come on up.
Good evening. Brooke Cole with GWC Capital. Councilman Ivy, the community trails the big thick line that you see going up that wash goes right past them. And so the public will have access to them. And as we talked in the last session, happy to create signage, interpretive signage, so that people know they're there and can help draw attention to them and also respect for them.
Is there any desire to create any kind of a diversion so that they're not further eroded or damaged from the annual rains and runoff?
We have not looked at that, no.
Is there any kind of a register where they've been registered with any of the agencies that follow dinosaur tracks? Like, I know this isn't BLM ground, so that wouldn't follow. But you are aware where they're at. You've identified
and
them.
that's the reason why the trail, the community trail, goes right up through there, and it does follow the master plan from Washington City's Parks and Trails master plan, not only going north and south there, but the one going east and west as well, to get people back over to the Baby Elephant Arch and connecting them to the parking for that trailhead at that location as well. That's how they would access those. But to the classification of those and to whether they're registered or not, I would defer to Sitla, who did the archaeological study on the whole site. And I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that or not.
Aaron Langston with Sitla. Councilman Ivy, thank you for those questions. I appreciate that. Just maybe to back up a little bit and to provide some context to this. When Sitla goes to develop its lands, it obviously has to go through the SHPO process, which of course means that we have to go out, we have to do a cultural clearance of the lands. We've had a lot of studies done throughout the years on this, particularly through about 2000 to 2004 is when most of the crews were out there. And then as we were finishing up our projects in the Sienna Hills development, particularly if you're familiar with that one, in parcels 5, 6, 7, and 8, as we were finishing up there, we sent our crews from that location to the Green Springs location. So this would have been roughly the 2017-18 timeframe. And so at that point, we do what we call recovery, which is where we actually go in. We essentially take everything out that would potentially be in the way of development, which would then enable our developers to go forward and actually grade the property from that side of things. Of course, the dinosaur tracks did come up. Of course, there are other cultural resources in there that did come up. So that is all documented. That has all gone through the appropriate channels. And when we get into dinosaur tracks, we have a lot more leeway into what we can do than with certain cultural resources. Just for example, if you look over what we did in Sienna Hills, we do have a petroglyph site there. We spent a lot of money to make sure that those would be preserved. So we build a lot of rockery walls around those sites to make sure, and we have to consult with our archaeologist group on that as to how they want that to look. Do you want us to build kiosks and invite the public to come in? Do you want us not to do that, to maybe keep them more protected? And so we do have to work very closely with them, and they are the ones who set those rules as to what we can and cannot do with those resources. Happily, with the dinosaur footprints, it's not as closely guarded, so we can absolutely rely to your expertise and to your desires as to what happens to those, because we have already done the mitigation section of that. So like Brooke Cole was, we can do what the council would like to do. If you want to see kiosks there or whatnot, we're open to whatever you would suggest.
I appreciate that, Mr. Langston. Thank you very much. So, Mayor, I know this wasn't formal, but that concludes my questions, concerns. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any additional questions, comments?
I'm just wondering, was there any comments other from either of you regarding other questions Councilman Ivy had, or in his just comments that he had? Is there anything that you wanted to address there, or you're okay with?
Is there something particular that you would like us
No, we just look forward to preliminary plat to,
So
thank you, Councilman.
if I could just build on that, is there a plan or a commitment to trying to keep these trails open during construction? Can you try to articulate that?
Yeah, absolutely. As we made the commitment to Jeremy and to the Parks and Rec director, there's a certain period of time when we're building in and have the heavy equipment in and around there that we're not going to be able to have access to them. But the goal is to keep them as open as much as we can, even on a temporary basis, and make sure that the public does have access at the appropriate time. The only one that we think that is any duration of time would be the Dino Cliffs, because of the duration to build a hotel of this size and of this caliber may take several years. So there might have to be a temporary location to access the trails and the Red Cliffs area in that area, not necessarily particularly at that blue area that you see there today.
Stay there for just a second if you don't mind. Drew, can you show where the existing trailhead is for Elephant Arch on that? Is it just?
Well, it's up clear. It's up on the other.
Yeah, because I'm trying to. Where you park and what I'm thinking is there's a power line road that kind of parallels Bone Wash, and I'm thinking access to that road still. Where does that access come off? Does it go through your development, or is there another access to that? What the map showed as Power Line Road. I remember walking it up by the power tank.
Well, it's true. You have
water tank.
Both our city trucks as well as St. George city trucks.
I'm just
going
curious
to
on the access to that particular road.
So that will come right off of the public loop road that's there. There is no other access that I'm aware of other than following.
Brooke, a little closer, a little closer, a little closer.
Yeah.
So we're outside of your development then.
So for that particular location, the public road goes right by it. And so that public road that we'll build up through there would provide access directly to it. So it doesn't go through any of the estate neighborhoods or anything else.
Are you talking Washington Parkway?
No, I'm talking about the loop road that would be built off of Washington Parkway, looping up through the whole development and back down. That white space that you see there.
Yeah,
is the
that's
public
your
road.
access to the new proposed trailhead. I'm still I wish I could remember where the access is for the Power Line Road, and
well, so you go right now. You go straight up Main Street. Now that jogs over,
and that's where I remember
it goes
going
straight up, and it basically just tees right in there at that.
And it kind of angles
There's
off.
a horseman's access step through, and the gate right there.
Is there another access over to the west that you get into those roads?
There's a lot of roads over in there. The development's going to have to observe existing right-of-ways and easements for the power and different utilities. And surely the utility road that exists currently will remain. That road will still
it
need
goes
to
up
be
and then that
accessed.
kind of angles to the right.
Well, you could get on that Power Line Road and come in that goes clear out.
Right. So where does Power Line Road tie in?
Turkey Farm, doesn't it?
Oh, so
Yeah.
you've got to go clear over.
Oh, way over, yeah.
Yeah.
Get there from Turkey Farm. You can actually get there from what's the
Green
trail?
Springs,
What's the
Green
trail?
Springs, the Ice House Trail
Yep.
is a walking trail, but it's not. You can't drive in it on that.
Yep. But yeah, there's actually utility purposes up that road still. There's several different utility needs that'll.
Well, this doesn't
maintain the
change
road.
that access. I'm just going off memory.
That's almost all of your wells
Mhm.
access right off that. Well, not almost all. I think that is all of them.
Yeah.
Access right off there.
It sure makes it a challenge if you have to go clear over to Turkey Farm Road
No,
and then back around to access your utility.
That road will keep access. That access won't be. It'll probably be a gated, a locked gate. They don't want the public accessing there, but yeah, those utilities will keep the right.
Well, it'll be nice
access
just to work through that, whatever access needs to happen to be able to conveniently get in there still.
Yeah, and in your packet, we did find it. I know we talked about this last time. It is on page F9. It shows a conceptual site plan for that particular trailhead. It shows the access still going back as you're suggesting.
See,
Councilman
Drew,
Staley.
if you zoom in on like the little bubble 13, And just kind of to the north there, is that the existing trail or is that the road?
That's the road.
That's the road.
The road right there that you see in the picture.
That's the road. So they brought the trailhead parking down a little bit. We talked about that. It fit better into their community. So it's extending that a little bit, but.
So the upper reaches of their estate village stretch right to where the current trailhead begins, the fence line there, which is the habitat line.
But do we currently have a road access there up
Yes.
to Power Line Road?
Yes.
And that's my question is, are we going to maintain that road access into the reserve? So I'm trying to, I know we've talked so much trails, I'm talking
Yes.
roads specifically.
Yes, but it won't be public access at that point.
Right.
That would be
But
vehicular.
they will they'll have to maintain that because there's city vehicles from both Washington and St. George that are up in there at least every other day, if not every day.
Yeah, so right now there's the same concept just at a different location, which is public access stops at the fence and they have to step through, but there's a lock and a gate that utility vehicles use as needed. And so, when I'm up there with the dog, we walk on the road that
Right.
that the utility crews drive on.
I'm just, and it's been a while since I've been there, so that's generally how I remember it, but I'm thinking, where's the access now when we come into this gated estate part of the community? Where's the access, and is that being planned for?
So the access is actually through the trailhead itself, through the public street and through the public trailhead. Would have where Mr. Segmiller is saying the gate would be.
I don't believe they can move the road.
Yeah.
The road's location exists as element.
It'll
of
be
the-
the same way it is now, only the gate will be further down.
Correct. And the reason for that is that's where they're able to incorporate the trailhead into their parks and other
Will
systems.
be one and the same, the trail and the road, or will there?
Yes, through that segment till you get to the fence where you step over the fence or where you have another gate.
Other
getting
than a
back in there.
trailhead that moves, that section stays how it's been. So you could park there, or if you're a utility truck, you drive up and access into, okay.
Yes. Mhm. And then down in the other village where your other well is we have planned access to get off of the private roads and stuff into that as well. So we provide enhanced access to the wellhead.
And the same vehicular access for utilities exists on your other trailhead. I mean, that same issue remains today, is they need to get up there as well. And so that'll be the standard for both of those trailheads. Any existing road, like at what's the other one called? I want to say Horseman, but it's not Horseman.
Prospector.
At Prospector, that road exists because of utilities, and it's one that we've converted to a trail as we've tried to respect.
Popularity is.
But that road exists because of the utilities that are up in those areas. And we'll still need vehicular access to those, and so that'll be maintained.
Thank you, Brooke. Appreciate it. No additional questions. I'll entertain a motion.
Well, Mayor, you mind if I make a comment here?
I do not.
We were kind of talking about the public's input and how, how well that works in other circumstances. This is one of those instances where two different governmental entities come together on something like this, and it was really, I don't know. I took a minute to jump on their website and update myself, and with their charter, and which stretches back to Thomas Jefferson. And anyways, it was amazing to me. We have totally different goals, and it's just been interesting to watch these two different governmental entities kind of work together and to benefit school children in our area, but also to benefit our community long term. So again, one of the joys of being on council, this kind of collaborative efforts that bring about good projects.
You want to make a motion after that?
I'm not even in the right spot. Somebody can make a motion.
All right, Mayor, I'll take a stab.
Thank you.
And I find it interesting. I have no real conditions to put on this. I think it's been vetted well. So I'll read the motion here. A motion that this council approve an ordinance adopting zone change and PCD plan request Z-21-23 to change from open space to planned community development located north of Washington Parkway. And that's just based on the findings, subject to the conditions, and based on all of the discussion and representation that's been provided to us. That's my motion.
And
I'll
Mayor,
second that.
oh, sorry, go ahead. No, go right ahead.
We have a motion and a second. We'll do roll call vote.
Bundy, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Ward, aye.
Staley, aye.
All right, it's approved. Okay, move on to item 10B. Consideration to approve a development agreement between Washington City and Green Springs PCD.
Mr. Segmiller, I need to ask you kind of a procedural question where we tabled 10A. What is your opinion on, can we go ahead and vote on this, or would it be better served to table it until there's more discussion regarding the agreement?
I wouldn't table it. I don't think there's going to be a memorandum of understanding coming to you. And so what you're going to get is a proposed real property acquisition. And so, yeah, don't table it. Just, indicate that it's no longer a necessary agenda item.
Any additional discussion on the item? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I asked to have these on the same agenda, so I'll go ahead and motion that we approve the development agreement between Washington City and Green Springs PCD as presented by Council Thad Segmiller.
Bundy, second.
I do have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Staley, aye.
Ward, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Bundy, aye.
Thank you, that's approved. Item 11, anything to report from your assigned committees?
Mayor, I would just make reference to today's special legislative session. It was held, it had several agenda items on today's and yesterday's agendas. Some of the more notable ones were that the legislative maps have been approved by the legislature. And there's some the boundary maps, yes. Legislative boundary, or the boundary maps, yes. And then some election processes, and then the Dixie name change issue was decided tonight as well. We will have a meeting, legislative policy will be next Monday, where a lot of these things have been culminating in this session. So now we'll move forward with some new conversations and some old ones. So that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? City manager report.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of items today. The first item, I want to talk a little bit about our council schedule for the rest of the year. It's been typical that you would only have one meeting in November and one in December, but with the amount of work and items that we have coming to us, at the beginning of the year, we scheduled 2 meetings in each month. So right now, we have scheduled November 23rd, which is Tuesday. So that's moved up a day because of Thanksgiving. We have an RDA meeting on that day, and that's been advertised, so that one will happen on a Tuesday. December 8th would be our regular Wednesday meeting. We have a meeting scheduled right now for December 22nd. I'd like to ask your opinion and see if you would be okay with moving that one to the Tuesday as well, to kind of move it out of conflict with Christmas. That would be December 21st. I can commit to trying to keep these meetings as short as possible, if that helps anybody. I think we need to have them to keep things moving forward, or we're going to have a real glut in January, but we could try to certainly push off anything that wasn't urgent.
I think we need to have the meetings. Last year, we had some super crazy long meetings because
we had a bunch of extra meetings
in
for
January
PC.
and February that hurt us because we pushed off stuff. And I think we should have them. I'm open to moving it to Tuesday. It doesn't bother me to have it on Wednesday.
Is that same time?
It'd be the same time.
On both those that you mentioned in November and, okay.
Anybody, are you planning on having, which one?
So it'd be on the, oh, okay.
Are you planning on having workshop and council meeting?
So the RDA meeting on November 23rd, we're hoping to have the RDA in place of the workshop unless something jumps up that needs to be on that workshop agenda. And we'll definitely try to keep it as light as possible for you. I can't tell you exactly what, but I'll try.
We didn't sign up for light.
The,
We just do
I
the
know,
business.
Do we have
the
a hard
RDA,
cut time?
which RDA are we
The
talking about?
RDA is to discuss, Rusty can tell us, but we have it's to discuss the potential CRA for the auto mall tax financing, sales tax.
I'm a little bit caught off guard. So we had approved to put together a preliminary budget and plan, and so that will plan. So we're looking at a possible incentive for the auto mall, and we would put that within the CRA. And so to organize a CRA, we would have a budget, a plan, and then the agreement would be with the CRA and with the council. So there would be an agenda item for the RDA to approve an interlocal agreement between those two bodies, which the council is the head of those two bodies. So you're having an agreement with yourself is kind of how that
And we
works.
should get along fine.
Right. So there would be the first one for the RDA approval of it, and then in city council for that interlocal agreement.
But
So
technically,
those
what
three
does that
items.
mean if we can't agree? What does that mean?
I'm not sure how we'll handle that.
I like to put Rusty and any other employee on the spot anytime I can, so she does a good job. The other thing I would just mention is we had some good meetings this week on to start the Washington Fields commercial design guideline process. I thought that they were productive and we're headed down a good road there. So just mention that to the public. We were able to meet with landowners, stakeholders, and I thought it was a good productive meeting. So that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Bye.